Yo, welcome to the start of the Wadcast podcast. We're about to get into it. When I say we, I mean me. That's right. I'm solo, guys. It's Eddie Ift here, and today's episode, I will be speaking with the one, the only, Buddy Morris. That's right, Buddy Morris, the head strength and conditioning coach for the Arizona Cardinals. How did I get him? Because I'm just that badass. No, I begged and pleaded, and Buddy was awesome. He's also a burger, and when I say a burger, I mean a yinzer. He is from my hometown. We get into it. Pittsburgh people stick together. It was great talking to Buddy. Well down in Arizona. Went over to his house, met his wife. They scared the shit out of me. You can see that on the Facebook page, maybe Instagram page, which brings me to please jump on the Instagram page. Scott converted our old Instagram page over to Postwad. So now I have to create, I created a new Wadcast podcast page, and I'm putting up all the pictures and everything. So please follow us on there, because advertisers are like, hey, what happened to your numbers? Blah, blah, blah. And then you got to get them up. And you know how this whole world, we're living in this weird world right now with social media where there's metrics on everything and it helps. So I don't want to beg. I don't want to plead. I don't want to sound like a douchebag, but just go to our Facebook and our Instagram and add us. And we'll keep putting out, I keep talking in third person. I'll keep putting out episodes for you. This one is one of my favorites. We really got into it, Buddy and I. The guy knows his shit. He was recommended to me by Ryan Flaherty, which we get into. And that's that. Otherwise, help out the show. Go to our Patreon. Go to Patreon, and what happens at Patreon? You donate $3, you can see the episodes. Few of these episodes we have not put up because of I got to stop doing it. I sound like a crazy person. But I haven't put them up because I've been having some technical difficulties. Some are up, some aren't, but nobody's complaining, nobody's bitching. $3 gets you the videos, and $5 gets you the possibility of getting a Myopux and a leopard claw, which is worth about $450. If you don't know by now what a Myopux is or what a leopard claw is, you live in a cave, because I talk about it every episode. They're pretty awesome. And our friend over there at Myopux and leopard claw, Troy Willis, helps us out a lot on the show. The leopard claw is a soft tissue multi-tool designed for versatile self-mobilization. It increases blood flow while breaking up restrictions in the tissue and ultimately helps you move better. Myopux is a portable and affordable electronic muscle stimulation and TENS device. The Myopux increases blood flow, but most importantly, removes the waste to help you recover more efficiently. The Myopux will also help decrease pain associated from overuse. When you use both together, it's a game changer. And let's see, who is our special winner of a Myopux and leopard claw this week? By the way, if you never got yours, if we said you won and you didn't, contact us. Troy and I will get that out to you. But I think everybody's gotten theirs. Our winner today of the Aaron Cook. There you go, Aaron. How about that? I just scrolled through randomly, and Aaron Cook, you are the winner of a Myopux and a leopard claw. So we will get that out to you ASAP. And you can get one too. Just sign up, donate at least $5 a month, and you'll get one of these maybe. And what else is going on? Shows have been great. I've got a lot of amazing upcoming episodes. I believe we have Dr. Drew coming up, Kelly Starrett, Brian McKenzie. I'm all over the place. Getting these interviews. So Arizona, San Francisco. Oh, Doug Chapman up there in Ann Arbor, Michigan. One of the OGs of CrossFit. So look out for these episodes coming up. I am working fucking hard. And our sponsor today is For Athletics. So if you want to get in on the co-branding of 4Athletics, go to 4athletics.com. They got a co-branding page, and get a hold of some Wadcast ones. I told last episode, I said I'd do the open, but only at the 60 plus women's division weights. If you want to see me live this weekend, I'm in Sunnyvale, California. Sunnyvale, California at Rooster T. Feathers. That's South Bay. Come out and see me. Love the club. It's a great club. Really fun to do. If you live anywhere around San Jose, it's a good place to be. Next week, 2 nights were canceled. I didn't cancel. Club canceled me because a special guest is coming in. I can't tell you who it is, but it rhymes with Phil Crosby. I'm just kidding. It's not Bill Cosby. But I will no longer be performing on the 24th and 25th. I am only there on the 26th and 27th. So if you're trying to buy tickets or you bought tickets, you'll probably be happier with the special guest. But if you like me and you're coming to see me, only on the 26th and 27th will I be there. The following week, which is it's January 31st, February 1st, 2nd, I'm at the Woo-Ha-Ha. Yes, I just said that. I am at the Woo-Ha-Ha in Worcester, Massachusetts. Yeah, and I've got a whole bunch of interviews set up for when I'm in Mass, and then I'm going to be on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. I'm going to be in New York City at the Comedy Cellar. So if you're in New York, come out and see me there. Maybe I'll be working out at Solus CrossFit. It's a pretty cool gym in New York. And then the 7th, 8th, and 9th, I will be at Laugh Boston, right there in downtown Boston. It's like, I don't know, in the Seaport or something it's called. That's a good club. Come out and see me there, Boston people. I know it'll be farking real cold, but we'll have a good time. And then I get on a plane and I head to Australia. I'll be in Australia, in Adelaide, Australia, from the 15th of February until the 17th of March. That's every night of the week. I do a show at the Garden of Unearthly Delights. I'll be doing my brand new 1-hour show, which is called Walking on Eggshells. Come see that. Or you can see me down in Tasmania. I'm going to be in Launceston on the 21st. I think it's the 21st. My God, what am I going to do for all those days in between? And then I'm headed to the Sydney Comedy Store, 28th, 29th, 30th of March. Then I head back. I'll be in Edmonton, Canada, 4th, 5th, and 6th of April. And then I'll be in Las Vegas in the end of April. Lots more dates coming up. Check them all out at eddyift.com. I'm traveling every single week, so see me somewhere or come, maybe you'll see me at a gym or let me know if I'm coming to your town. I try to make it to a lot of CrossFits. I sometimes can't do it. My schedule doesn't allow it, but I try. And don't beat the shit out of me when I get there. It's my life is hard enough. So I think that's it. So check out everything at eddyift.com or at our website, wadcastpodcast.com. You can email me at wadcastpodcast@yahoo.com. How about that? wadcastpodcast@yahoo.com. And thanks for all the support. I appreciate it. It's been a tough transition doing the show alone, and I appreciate you guys backing me up. I didn't think I'd get this much support. There were haters out there. I don't know if they left or they're just being nice to me now, but I appreciate it. And enjoy this episode with Buddy Morris. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Wadcast Podcast. I'm Eddie Ift. I'm doing my Pittsburghese as best as I can because I'm down here in Arizona and that where it's like a desert and shit. Sitting here with one of the greatest strength and conditioning coaches in the history of the world and Pittsburgh. That is Buddy Morris. He's the head strength and conditioning coach at the Arizona Cardinals. He has been everywhere from the University of Pittsburgh, the University of Buffalo, the Cleveland Browns, high schools. He's had his own gyms. He is Ryan Flaherty, who was the head of Nike training, who probably one of our highest rated episodes ever, mentioned you to me and said, I said, who do you look up to in strength and conditioning? And he said, Buddy Morris. And I said, holy shit, I know that guy. I said, I met him when I was a little kid. My father worked with the Pitt football program, and that's where Buddy was the coach under Jackie Sherrill.
Jackie Sherrill, Foge Fazio. And Mike Godfrey, Paul Hackett,
Wanstead,
Walt Harris.
Oh, you were with Walt Harris too?
Wanstead, yes.
How many years did you do at Pitt?
I actually did 20 years on 3 separate occasions. The last time with Coach Wanstead, and I was actually going to take the job of the Washington Redskins and Mike Shanahan, but Coach Wanstead got me a 3-year deal. After the first year, obviously, and I apologize for a little bit of a rant here, that jackass Steve Peterson came back as the athletic director.
Nobody likes that guy.
The guy, he's that guy that in your neighborhood and you're playing a pickup game,
right?
He's the last kid chosen. And the only reason you choose him is you feel sorry for him because he's standing there by himself with his hands in his pants. Doesn't matter if he has the game ball or anything. He's just that last kid.
Steve,
and I remember telling Coach, I said, I'm just telling you, I walked in his office, I said, we're not safe. And he goes, don't worry about it. I signed a 3-year deal, and then 1 year later, we're all unemployed.
Well, he was, for those of you listening that aren't familiar with, sometimes these people that listen to this show are just gym rats that don't follow football at all or don't follow sports. Steve Peterson was the athletic director at the University of Pittsburgh. Did he come from Ohio State or Nebraska?
He graduated from Nebraska, then came through Ohio State, and then eventually wound up at the University of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and was really good at demolishing football programs.
Yeah, he does a pretty good job of that. Yet he still gets a job. Well, finally, nobody has hired him. They finally figured him out. Like, people like that are finally and eventually figured out by smarter people. I'm very blessed right now to work for a very class organization, a class family, and Michael Bidwell. Our GM is Steve Keim, and it's a true honor to be not only just to coach in the NFL, because that's a priprivilege, Eddie.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's not anybody's right. It's an actual privilege. I have no idea how I got here. I know I owe BA, Bruce Arians, Michael Bidwell, and Steve Keim my life. I was in a very bad situation living in Buffalo, New York, which is one of the worst places in the world to live. My wife is from there, so I took the best thing out of Buffalo, and I brought her to Arizona. But I'll never go back there. I haven't been back there once. I went back there once because we played a game there.
What's the second best thing out of Buffalo? The wings?
Nothing. There's not a thing about Buffalo I can speak positively.
I just looked it up. Because I was arguing with my dad about Pittsburgh, the rainiest cities, the most precipitation in the country, and it's not Seattle. Everybody thinks it's Seattle, but Seattle doesn't get snow.
Right.
So Seattle gets the most rain, but precipitation, it's like Buffalo and Rochester are like number 1 and 2.
They're horrible. And
then Cleveland's number 3 and Pittsburgh's number 4.
I believe it. Listen, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, and I'm proud of that because of that blue-collar work ethic. But they got the worst traffic.
And the worst weather.
I don't live there either. But I refuse to ever go back to Buffalo, New York. When we played there a couple years ago, BA told me, he says, you better have your butt on that plane tomorrow. Because I literally thought about not getting on that plane. But it was a chance because one of my daughters, and I have 2 daughters, Kara and Claire. Kara still lives in Sharon, PA Hermitage. She drove up for the game, so it was a chance for me to see my children. Mm-hmm. The hardest thing about being out here in Arizona, and I love Phoenix. I love the people. I love the weather. People say, it gets hot out there. Listen, it's better than 30 below and 20 inches of snow.
Yeah, way better.
And when you have psoriatic arthritis, which I was diagnosed with a couple years ago, the heat is the greatest thing in the world for me. But I love getting up and seeing the sun every day, working for a class organization, a class man, and just being around the individuals and players I'm around every day. It's like I said, it's a privilege and it's a blessing. And how I got here, I'm just very thankful and very grateful to have that opportunity. And I understand, everybody says NFL not for long. Listen, I get that. I really do. But while I'm here, I'm going to try and make the greatest impact on our organization and help direct that organization to eventually winning a championship, which I believe the Bidwell family truly deserves.
So, the elephant in the room, the coach was just released how long ago, the head coach?
A week and a half ago.
A week and a half ago. But you have been through 2 head coaches. You're on your second head coach right now that you've stayed with the organization, correct?
Yes, and I'm very fortunate. And like I said, I owe a debt of gratitude to Steve Keim, our general manager, and Michael Bidwell, our owner, for their faith and belief in what we're trying to do as far as developing and directing a sports science program where we can provide the optimal environment for our athletes to thrive and train in. As a physical preparation coach in the NFL, you're up against some tremendous odds. The CBA has ruined everything. So from now till
that's the collective bargaining
agreement.
Yeah.
From now till we start our official offseason program, which we're going to start early again this year because of a new head coach, I can't see my guys. I can't touch them. So I can send home a program, but it's not guaranteed that they're going to do it. Now, one thing I did do this year, Ryan Flaherty has been a tremendous gift to me. I love Ryan. He's one of my go-to guys. I think he's one of the most intelligent people I've ever been around, as is Tommy Myslinski, who I actually trained Milo, who's a strength coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars, towards the latter end of his career in the NFL. He was my first assistant in Cleveland, my assistant in Pittsburgh. And Tommy and I still maintain a very close relationship, and I have the utmost respect because he's a very intelligent man. He's like me. He reads every day. He's never satisfied with what he does. He's always looking for new and better ways to help his athletes get better and better. But one thing I did this year that I thought about in the back of my mind, actually for the last couple of years. And let's face it, Eddie, 20 to 30 minutes before you start a workout, your body starts to become sympathetic dominant in anticipation of that workout. Getting under a load, the music, you're getting hyped. That's why people take pre-workout. So about a week before these guys go to camp, I don't care who you are, you start thinking, oh shit, camp is next week. So they start to become sympathetic dominant. They start to override every system in anticipation of the loads that they're about to incur, fighting for a job, and then playing at the elite level. Remember this, the NFL is elite against elite every weekend. It's like a Pitt and Penn State. It's like a Pitt, West Virginia. It's like Ohio State, Michigan, every freaking weekend. You're not getting a break.
Right.
There's no bad teams in the league. They're all great with great athletes. So you start to become sympathetic dominant that week before, and that continues all the way till the end of the season, which ours unfortunately ended a week ago or a couple of days ago. But here's what happens. It abruptly stops.
Right.
It's like running a car at a high speed into a brick wall. So you look at all the systems that have to deal with and adapt to stress: the cardiac, the cardiopulmonary, detoxification, hormonal, metabolical, central nervous system, neuromuscular, and also the central nervous system. We talk about the peripheral nervous system and the immune system. All those systems, which are on a heightened sense of awareness for the past 24 weeks, now come to an abrupt halt. They're expecting to play. So what I did, based off of Charlie Francis's,
Charlie Francis, the track coach from
Canada, who I think is one of the most intelligent people. Unfortunately, he's not around anymore.
He's not around, and it's hard to get any of his information without. Well, you got to purchase all his journals,
or you got to know Derek Hansen and people who have trained under and with Charlie.
Okay,
and I was very fortunate to have a great relationship with him. I still read his site. I still have, in fact. In one of my books at home in my office is his personal cell phone that I keep in there that Angela, her wife Angie, gave me years ago. But I went off.
So your background was track too.
My background was track. Believe it or not, I ran a 10-400 meters in college.
10-4?
10-4. People were shocked at that.
10-400 meters.
10-400 meters. Yeah.
So for those of you who don't understand how fast that is, that's fucking fast.
That's fast for a white guy. That's not fast anymore.
I still look at the times, and I was just looking at all the 40 times recently. 10-4 is still fast.
It wasn't bad.
And especially now that they're weaning out some of the steroids from the sports, you're starting to see some of the times go backwards, where they were running 9.7. They're not running 9.7 anymore.
Well, obviously the World Athletic Association has come out against doping.
Yeah.
You're never, ever going to get rid of it.
Yeah.
People are always, as long as there's money involved, as long as there's gold medals involved, people are going to constantly strive to better and get an advantage. This is my lovely wife, Monica. Like I told you, the best thing I ever took out of Buffalo was right there. People always ask me, why you still lift at your age? I'm like, you ever see my wife?
She's beautiful.
But anyway,
you might see her in the background on the YouTube.
The season comes to an abrupt stop. That's an adverse situation, tremendously stressful for those systems that have been on a high state of awareness all season long to just abruptly stop. So based off of Charlie Francis's Basement or Bike Tempo, I put together a 2-week program as a transition program to ease my guys into actual time off.
Right.
Now, question becomes,
ease them into time off.
Ease them into time off. So it just doesn't become an abrupt stop.
Right.
Because now you're going to be more prone to illness. You're going to be more moody.
Right.
Because everything is expecting to play a game this Sunday, and we're not.
Right.
So it's just a transitional period to allow them, like I said, to blunt the effects of just abruptly stopping the season. I talked to Tommy at Jacksonville, and Tommy said, awesome idea. But again, he brings up, and I know in the back of my mind, they ain't going to do it.
Right.
And there's number one problem with the NFL. So from now till they report in April, I can't touch them. I can't talk. They can come in and access our weight room.
You're not allowed to?
Not allowed to do anything.
That's weird.
So
because of the collective bargaining.
Because of collective bargaining. So the first 2 weeks of off season, it's all strength and conditioning. But then 2 weeks later in phase 2, they're back on the field. And then phase 3, they're on the field for 2 hours plus meetings for an hour. Now your time is down to an hour, which is basically just the weight room. And now you have to account for, Eddie, you have to account for the loads in practice. So if you look at the process of obtaining sports mastery, technical, tactical, physiologically, and psychologically, I have to take a back seat because technically and tactically is now the emphasis to play the sport.
Sure.
Remember, my guys are athletes. They're playing a sport. We're not weightlifters. The weight room supports what goes on in the field. The field does not support what goes on in the weight room.
Right.
So I have to account for all those stressors. So if you read the book Training Talk, which Martin Bissinger put together, which I think is a great book, Tommy is interviewed in there, and he talks about they're getting stronger on the field. You're running and you're doing all the high speed work and all the change of direction. You're overcoming resistance. You're getting stronger in your sport. Then you're going to get a little weaker in the weight room. Mm-hmm. You can't pull the body in different directions. Carmelo Bosco talked about in his research when he did the Italian ski team, they got better in the slopes, they got worse in the weight room. Well, that's what they're supposed to do.
Right.
You're supposed to get better in your sport.
Yeah.
If you're getting better in the weight room during the season, then you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So then after we finish OTAs, again, there's 5 weeks we can't touch our guys. Now, we get 2 extra weeks to our rookies, but there's 5 guys that are off on their own. You wouldn't run a business like that.
No.
But that's how the NFL is run.
So
when they come back the first day of camp, you don't know what they've done.
Right. What percentage of the guys do you think are adhering to your program?
Well, I look at what we call the rule of the third. A third have done something. A third have actually done what we sent home, and a third haven't done a damn thing.
I'm surprised with these guys with how...
And then the NFL wonders why their injury rates are so high.
But I don't understand with how high the stakes are, how much money they're making, what the peril is of like losing your job, why you wouldn't do exactly what. It's funny. Well, I asked Jeremy Tooman that one time, who was the
tight end for the Steelers.
Yeah, Jeremy. We were talking and we were joking about. I think it was Jerome Bettis, and he was like, they have to pay him to come to the weight room. And he said some of these guys are such gifted athletes,
exactly,
that they never felt like they ever needed weights because they're just so naturally gifted that they went. My dad used to say he was talking to Ricky Jackson once, who played at Pitt
Absolutely.
Way back when, and he said something to Ricky Jackson. Ricky Jackson said, "Weightlifting's for white people."
Listen, I'll tell you a funny story about Ricky, because I had him and Hugh Green, and it just so happens when we played in the Hall of Fame game a couple years ago, I'm standing on the sidelines, and these big mitts literally wrapped their arms around me and picked me off the ground. I'm like, who the hell? It was Ricky Jackson. But we were in the weight room one day with Ricky, and I put 225 on the bar, and Ricky goes to me, he goes, "How much that?" I said, "It's 2.25. He goes, "How much of that?" I said, "It's 225. I said, "You're going to lift that for hopefully 5 reps." But he was so gifted and so strong, as was Hugh Green. You can be strong in a weight room. That doesn't mean it transfers to the field. I've seen some of the greatest athletes on the field are the weakest in the weight room.
Sure.
Remember, we're training athletes. They're participating in a sport that's all they want to do is play the sport. Mm-hmm. Strength training and developing durability and resiliency, which is what preparation coaches are concerned about, is an afterthought to them. They just want to practice, play the game, make money, and go home. Mm-hmm. But it becomes a process where we have to constantly educate them why. So I've been fortunate, the last couple of head coaches I've had in Arizona, they've allowed me to present to the athletes PowerPoints. In other words, I'm a firm believer, you create awareness, you create cognition, you create motor learning or behavior change. So every year before we start our OTAs, I present why soft tissue injuries occur. So basically it comes down to maximize what you can control to minimize what you cannot control.
Interesting. So you're educating these guys so they go, I'm finally going to start lifting because I don't want to get hurt.
And that's what you have to you have to get them to buy in. Part of the buying is explaining what you're doing and why you're doing it. Second part of buying in is when they see that you're not training everybody the same. So I had a couple years ago, I had Drew Stanton, Carson Palmer. I've had Ryan Lindley, I have Matt Barkley. I've had a number of different quarterbacks, and all those quarterbacks had different programs. Carson was, and I don't think I'll ever be around 2 quality people like I was with Carson Palmer and Drew Stanton.
Oh, wow.
They truly look after me, and Brett Fisher, our PT, says they understood you, they got you. But I wrote separate programs for them because Carson was 38 years old.
Right.
You can't write the same program you're going to write for a young rookie.
Nope.
That's absurd.
Nope.
And you have to look at the age of each of these athletes. You have to look at, multiple years of playing the game. So what people forget is it's accumulated trauma over time, Eddie. These guys have been playing since they were junior high, or more than junior high, but midgets. So you start playing a midget.
Yeah.
And it's trauma because you're running headfirst into people. And every level you increase, or as you get closer to obtaining this process of mastering your sport, every level, those impacts become greater and greater because obviously now it's no longer a thought process. It's things just happen. So greater forces and velocities are occurred by these guys on the field. That's accumulated trauma. Best comment I ever heard was Jerome Bettis said, you only have so many hits in your body.
Yeah.
And that's highly specific and unique to every individual. And that's what people fail to forget. You can do the program I do. You're not going to get the results I get. Everybody's an individual. If you look at the multifactorial complex nature of the biological systems and how they respond to stress or loading, that's different for everybody. So every day there's uncertainty on training readiness. And when I look at readiness, I look at the maximum amount of strength that they can incur on one day. And they're responsive to the load. That's an uncertain process every day. And it all comes down to what have they done once they've left the building. And we talk about some of the most advanced recovery methods in the world, and we have those in Arizona. And we have some things that people don't have, which I'm not going to talk about. But still, it comes down to the basics or the essentials. The essentials are you got to sleep. How hard is that? You got to hydrate. The human body is over 70% water. What's the greatest conductor of electricity? It's water. The body is nothing more than a bioelectrical field. And you got to eat properly. But those three essentials aren't going to appear on Instagram, which we'll get into how social media has ruined this country. Nobody's going to go on Instagram and say, you know what? I had a great workout today because I slept well, I ate, and I was hydrated.
How do you compete? How do you combat that when you're taking a team across the country to play in a game and they get there the day before or whatever and they're jet lagged, they got to stay in a hotel, they're not sleeping in their own beds. I heard a sleep expert speak on Joe Rogan that wrote this book. I think his name's Matt Walker, who writes the authority on sleep right now. And he was saying that, everybody talks about hydration and what a difference that can make in your performance, but he's like sleep's
the most important thing they do.
And he said most athletes are competing at 30% of their level.
Submaximal level simply because they don't get enough sleep nightly. And thank God they're such great athletes that look at Roger Federer. My wife's a tennis fanatic. Roger Federer could play against a lower level opponent and only have to play at 30%. Well, that opponent is playing at 100%. Did you ever see these guys in tennis who they beat a Rafa Nadal or they beat a Roger Federer or they beat a Djokovic, and the next match they come back and they get crushed? It was just for that one moment, that one period of time, their preparation and their readiness was at a heightened ability that enabled them because they took what have I got to lose? I'm going to hit this shot. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
I'm not expecting to win. And that's how they overcome such great athletes. But you look at their next match, they always get crushed and they're out of the tournament. But the guys are operating sub-maximally. So thank God that everybody else is operating sub-maximally because you really never recover during an NFL season. I don't care who you are. You're playing the elite.
I don't know how.
My guys don't start to recover to Wednesday.
I bumped my knee yesterday, and I feel like I'm going to be out for 6 weeks.
Okay.
I don't know how those guys come back every single week and take this. It's Jerry Oslowski I used to see at the gym all the time when I lived in Pittsburgh. And I said, Jerry, what do you do? He goes, I don't get out of bed on Monday. He goes, I'm in pain all day Monday. He said, Tuesday I start walking around. Wednesday I hit the gym. Thursday, we're doing, and I said, what? He said, you can't practice at that level like you did when you were younger. You can't practice.
Nope.
He's like, you're going into a game on Sunday that you just don't, you got to get ready for that. And getting ready for that is rest, recovery, all this.
The mistake I see, I don't see a lot of NFL coaches, but the mistake I see some NFL coaches make is on Wednesday to Friday, you cannot ask them to strain their bodies and compete, because they'll have nothing left on Sunday.
Yeah.
And that's why we have Catapult, which is tracking. We use
what is Catapult?
Catapult is, tracking the loads, the high speed changes their direction, high speeds are outputted during practice. So it gives you an idea of how much stress your athletes are incurring.
And what is it, like a GPS test?
It's a GPS system, yeah. We've chosen Catapult. We've also used ForceDeck, which, J.P. Moran made people very aware of ForceDeck years ago. It's developing a force velocity profile. I kind of take the opposite end of the force velocity profile because all these guys are going to create great force. You can always train them to increase their impulse. But what you're going to see is asymmetries. So Matt Jordan, who's at the Canadian Sports Institute in Calgary, who's done all the research on force plate and ACL injuries because he has to deal with downhill skiing, which is very traumatic. And he has to put people back together, especially knees. has become an expert on correcting asymmetry. So
and where is he again?
He's in Calgary Sports Institute in Calgary, Canada. So we use our force decks to correct asymmetries. For example,
is this like the force plate thing that Ryan talks about all the time?
Yes, exactly. It's a force plate that Ryan introduced us 2 years ago. And we look at more at the asymmetries than I do it more and more than developing a force velocity profile in athletes. Because it's the asymmetries that will get you in trouble. Now, first thing you have to ask yourself when you look at asymmetries, if I'm an offensive lineman, does he play left side or right side? If he plays the left side, his right leg is going to be more dominant because his right leg is in front. Same thing if he plays the right side, his left leg is going to be more dominant. It's going to be more dominant. So we have to correct that because the body has built-in protective mechanisms that if you're dominant on one side, it's not going to allow you to produce the greatest amount of force in protection of the other systems or other limbs in the body. So our quarterbacks are always going to be right leg dominant.
Sure.
They load and land.
Sure.
So we have to spend a lot of time correcting asymmetries. The second thing we ask is, were they ever injured? We signed an offensive lineman from, I'm not going to say what team, but midway through the season who had a right knee tibial plateau fracture. And when we jumped him, he had a 25% deficit between right and left leg. So you're not going to see that with the eyeball. So we corrected it. So by the time he left, at the end of the season, that asymmetry was down under 12%, which is an acceptable margin. Because let's face it, we're all asymmetrical. Nobody's just symmetrical.
Right. I've done the DEXA scan before. We have people the
gold standard of body fat, body composition,
and we're able to see my asymmetries that were going on in my body. And I've got a bad ankle. I plate my ankle, so it's created all these deficiencies. And you look, it all goes upwards, and
it all starts at the bottom of the chain. And remember this. You have over 206 bones. You have 206 bones in your body, 26 in each foot. So that means a quarter of your bones are in your feet. Now that you have 33 joints in each foot. So how important do you think your feet are? The foot is the conduit which interfaces the ground, which sets the platform to how the body responds. So if your ankles are immobile, if you have lack mobility in your ankles, if you pronate in or flat foot, it shows me a sign of weak hips. It shows me at some point in time it's going to display itself up the chain. A lot of things can be explained. Shirley Sharman wrote a great book, and I'm on my second time reading because the body is aligned properly. It functions properly. Elite athletes are master compensators, and you have to find those compensation patterns. You have to find those different movement strategies that they use. So when Evan Lauder, who is my data collector, he does our catapult and he does our force deck for me, when he looks at numbers, he gives me a sheet or a readout on every player. And he identifies whether they're green, which is mean they're good to go. Yellow, this has to be corrected. Or if it's a red flag, this has to be taken care of now. We had one of our starters report to camp who had a 50% deficit between his legs.
Wow.
Ryan Flaherty was there when he saw him jump. He said, buddy, I know, Ryan, I got to correct this. Problem is, I got to correct it during the most intensive period of time, camp, and then the more intensive period of time when they start the season because now intensity ramps up because guys have made the team, now are playing on the elite level.
Former injury, or what was the reason for the deficit?
The third reason I look at, besides injury or where they play in the field, what position, is you have a shitty strength program. And that's the problem out there. These personal terrorists are pulling my guys away from the intention of our program. They don't call me and say, what do you want done
when
with
you
this
say
individual?
Personal terrorists, you mean the ones on Instagram?
Oh, yeah, all of them. Every freaking single one of them. Now, there's some I have a lot of respect for. But my guys like Ryan Flaherty, Derek Samuels, I have Brett Fisher, Mike Gadango, those guys who I know that train high elite athletes,
right.
I use as people, Pete Bomarito, who I can go to and ask questions, but more importantly, I can communicate with them if one of my athletes is there. Most of these guys don't get in touch with us, don't follow our program. I'll give you a perfect example. We have one of our rookies who's getting ready for the NFL Combine. And how about this statement? The Jamaicans are fast because they walk in their bare feet on sand all day. I'm like, whoa, really? There's no fast Arabs or Egyptians. There's a lot of islands in the Mediterranean, the South Pacific, and Atlantic that have a lot of sand that those people aren't fast either. It has nothing to do with walking in sand. In fact, training in sand doesn't transfer further to the solid ground because we don't play beach volleyball. It destroys the elastic reactive response and dissipates forces. It makes you take shorter, choppier steps. There's no transference to what we're doing on the field.
So he was training on the sand.
Yeah, they had him training in the sand. But the reason was...
he went down to Jamaica and trained with them? Or?
No, he was in the United States.
Okay,
so his personal terrorist told him that. One of the reasons we're doing it in sand is because the Jamaicans walk in sand in bare feet.
Yeah, there's
I'm like,
also...
shit, I'm going down to Jamaica, walk around for bare feet and get back my 10 to 4.
Did you also mention, what's his name? Angel Hernandez or whatever his name, who's the coach of the Jamaicans, that also helps out why they're so good.
Listen, I've been over to Altus where Dan Paff is, and I think the world of Dan Paff, Stuart McMillan, and Chidi and those guys, Andreas over at Altus, because number one, they give me a written invitation to come in anytime I want, and just talk to them and some of the Jamaican coaches who were there at one time. I've never seen one video or anybody's talk about Usain Bolt training in the sand. He does sprint work. Which if you're going to run fast, you're going to try to run fast, you have to train fast.
Yep.
Like Charles Francis always told me, to expand the alactic envelope, you have to train the alactic environment. You know, a lot of people talk about the hamstring in this country and they say, oh, hamstring lacks strength. If you don't expose the hamstring to high velocity work, and people forget 5 times ground reaction forces, 7 times musculoskeletal forces every time that single limb hits the ground, that's pretty impressive. That's a lot of force and stress that must be incurred. Sprinting will drive up weights. Weights don't drive up sprinting. In the very beginning, they will, because you're producing more force. So the biggest mistake I see made in this country is people tell you want to run fast, you have to increase stride length and stride frequency. It's bullshit.
That's what I learned. Everyone always told me that. Stride length.
Don't mistake correlation for causation. You want to run faster, apply more mass-specific force, the proper biomechanical positions, ever decreasing increments of time, you'll run faster. Now, as Dan Paff said, nobody fits the optimal model. I mean, if you look at my wife's son, Fred Duncan, did a great post on his website. He showed Michael Phelps, who is very kyphotic, and he showed Michael Johnson, who at one time held the world record of 400 meters. Now, all the postural fanatics out there, if they would have run bad times or did bad times in the water, they had all said, oh, it's because he has poor posture. He has shitty posture, and they're setting world records because they're doing what works for them.
Sure.
Not the same thing is not going to work for everybody, and you have to find that. But those biomechanical positions, there's a width or band on each side because we're not all going to fit the optimal model. You can look Usain Bolt start. He has tremendous internal rotation on his hips. Part of it is because he's 6'5", over 6'5". But it works for him. Ben Johnson literally jumped out of the blocks. So Hank Krajinoff, who's from the Netherlands, who developed some great sprinters, was speaking at the Central Virginia Sports Performance clinic down at which Jay DeMayo does a great job running. I spoke there at the same time Hank Krajinoff did, and he talked about, he was in the back of a room as a presenter was presenting, and he showed one of Hank's sprinters, and he said, this is how we want all our athletes to look coming out of the blocks. Hank raised his hands and said, no, that's what works for him.
Right.
So you have to try and find what works for everybody.
Did you work with Lee McRae at all?
No, I knew Lee because he came out for football.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That was a short-lived career. So everybody figured out this guy's a world record holder in the 60s. We're going to double team him, and then he finally figured out he can't catch the ball. What
he couldn't see. He had bad eyesight.
He couldn't catch the ball.
Lee McRae, I got to run against him a few times. He had graduated, but he would come back and do like blue gold events. And Lee McRae was the world record holder of the 60 meter dash, and Ben Johnson had the 55 meter. One of them,
right?
But he had beat Ben Johnson and won. And to this day, his record might even still hold. He's arguably one of the fastest men in the history of the world,
no question.
And they said you can find this on the internet. Somebody says that he was clocked at doing like a 3:9:40.
Yeah,
which I don't believe either.
I really don't believe anything that appears on the internet anymore. Social media has ruined this country. People are living delusional, dysfunctional lives through social media. I don't give a shit that today you're going to squat. I really don't. Unless you're a Mr. Olympian, I might be interested to see what they do, but I'm not interested in what the average individual portrays themselves to be on social media. You're a nobody.
Guys, I just want to interrupt the show for a second to talk to you about our sponsor. If you're a gym owner or manager, then this message is specifically for you. For Athletics, we are working with. They are the makers of 100% USA-made premium leggings. That's right. Think like yoga pants, the things that make women look so amazing. They've created a true one-stop for gym owners when it comes to co-branding leggings. They're continuing to develop a co-branding platform for their all-time best-selling legging. That one is called the Rise Up High Waist 7/8 Omni Legging. Did you get that? Rise Up High Waist 7/8 Omni Legging. Look for that one on their page at forathletics.com. They want to help you get your logo or branding on premium leggings for your members to work out in and rep your gym. Okay? Doesn't have to be all your members. It can be some of your members. Doesn't matter what size your gym is. You can have 5 members. You can have 1,000 members. But this is a way to get your group together, get your gym together, get your community together, and get your logo on there. You're going to advertise for your gym, and they are quality. Here's the best part. You're not going to like pay out of pocket. What you do is you get the group together. You put an order in, they print them for you. They're the one-stop shop for your gym. They make the leggings. They give you access to their designers to get your branding on the leggings, and they provide renderings. You can share it with your members for pre-sale orders. They have in-house printers, print on the leggings for you, and then they fulfill all the orders and ship them out to you. How about that? Here's the best part. Like I said, no minimum orders. Doesn't matter if you have a huge gym like like Invictus or someone like that, or you're just a bunch of dudes in a garage or women in a garage. You get your branding, you get it out there, you advertise for your gym, and you can buy 5 or 500. And here's the deal. They're all the same low price. $40 per legging. That's $40. And this co-branding platform's been designed for you, the small gym owner. They're thinking about you. This is a way for you to get your gym together, and you can mark it up to any price you want. Sell them. It's a good way to make some extra cash for your gym and also get your logo out there, get advertising, get all these good looking people wearing your leggings, and people go, I want to know what gym they're coming from. So check them out, 4athletics.com. Go to their affiliates part on there. It's actually 4athletics.com/pages/affiliate. That's 4athletics.com/pages/affiliate. They also have some Wadcast leggings there that you should get and then wear. Because I said if 10 people buy them, that's all that has to happen. 10 people buy them, and I will wear them and do the over 60 workout. Over 60 female workout in the open. Every one of them. I'll do 5 weeks of it. Yeah, I said it. I'm not afraid. So with your athletes, are you worrying about their PRs at all, or are you just worrying about?
I'm worried about overall training and develop durability and resiliency. My goal of training is to increase the biological output of the organism. In other words, improve the working ability of all the body systems as a whole. Understanding that no system works independently of all the other systems. We are an independent matrix system. Every system supports every other system. So my goal in training is, number one, try to not to outrun the slowest system to adapt. I don't think you can separate recovery and adaptation. I think they're one and the same, because you never fully recover to your previous level, because if you did, you really didn't adapt to the stimuli that you provided. So to me, adaptation and recovery are one and the same. I also think that people get too carried away with all the recovery methods. Understand this: inflammation, the metabolic, enzymic, and hormonal changes that occur or are disrupted from training are all part of the adaptation process. At some point in time, you got to let the body do its job.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then you'll blunt the effect of actually having the body to promote its own ability to recover. That's why I said, if you don't have the 3 essentials, the bottom of the pyramid, hydration, nutrition, and again, I go back to proper sleep, then don't expect those other things to work.
Sure.
Winston Churchill said it best about this country: Americans will always figure it out after they've tried everything else. We're a gadget, gimmick-oriented, show me the newest, latest, greatest toy, because they think it's going to. The basics are the basics for a reason, because they work. People are shocked at how basic my program is. We sprint. We basically follow Charlie France's integrated periodization concept. Now, understand this.
What is that a bit? Just a
all the components that are inherently involved in developing a power speed athlete are addressed all year long, but what is being emphasized, those other components are maintained at a lower level. So when our highest volume of sprint work is occurring with our skill guys, their volume of work in a weight room has decreased tremendously. And like I said, I refer back to those ground reaction forces, those musculoskeletal forces that people must incur, and understanding that sprinting makes use of motor units that aren't accessible by any other means. But people are afraid to program sprint training.
Are you going to use a sprint training workout? Because from my past of doing it, a sprint training workout that's like going the equivalent of going in the gym and doing a heavy lifting workout.
Absolutely. And it's different for each position. You can't ask a 300-pound lineman to sprint the same volume of work, the same distance as your skill guys do. So we program specific to the position, and the application is different.
Sure.
So our big guys, we're looking at that first 3 to 5 yards. Their maximal sprint with a loaded sled or with a prowler may be 10 meters or 10 yards. Where our skill guys, especially those guys who have to recover punts, we may have them go 50, 60 yards full bore.
Right.
After overcoming or veering off. Because unlike track, We don't run down a straight lane with nothing happening on either. Ours is a chaotic environment. Our guys are always processing and receiving sensory information every second of the day, as is every individual. As we exist on this planet. But in sports, it's now become more chaotic. You have people come from every different direction. You look at when Larry's 75-yard reception when we beat Green Bay in our first one of our playoff games in overtime. Larry doesn't run a straight line for 75 yards.
Right.
He weaves, bobs, and weaves in and out. So really,
talking about Larry Fitzgerald,
never achieves max velocity. Now, a great sprinter, they're going to achieve max velocity 50, 60, or like you're saying, Bolt at 70 meters and hold on to it. He who holds on to it or decelerates the least usually wins. In football, if you look at the research by Peter Whalen and Ken Clark, who are two very smart people, they'll show you that by 10 meters, you're at 60%. By 20 meters, you're at 82 to 84%. By 30 meters, you're at 92 to 96% of max velocity because that's required by the sport. That's what our sport requires. But most guys don't go 30 meters in a straight line without somebody getting in front of them.
Right.
Plus, a ball in the hand, equipment, helmet. There's a lot of things that have to be factored in. But when we do a speed workout, it actually is we train our skill guys like track sprinters. So their jumps, their plyos are different from our big guys. Their med ball throws are different from our big guys. And then you have the semi-skill, which are transient from linebacker, tight end, because they have to have a little bit of both. Ryan Williams and I wrote a book about physical preparation for American football, and in there we have a chart that tells you how to train each position. And it shows what ability is more important or should be prioritized by position.
Interesting.
So, for example, linemen, obviously the main trait we want to address is maximal strength. That's not the same for our skill people, and it's not the same for our quarterbacks. In fact, our quarterbacks don't even bench press. Our quarterbacks are all different variations of cable pressing, dumbbell pressing, and different variations of loaded push-ups. There's no reason for a quarterback to bench press, in my opinion.
Right.
What do? They take a 3, 5, or 7-step drop, and they throw the ball down the field. One of the things we did with Josh Rosen this year is we had to correct a lot of issues. He had 4 different offensive coordinators. He had shoulder and elbow problems. But if you looked at him, you can see, and if you ever read Eric Cressy and Mike Robinson, have listened to them talk about throwing, which is where I went to correct this kid, is, the spine and the rib cage guide the scapula. Scapula guides arm guide the humeral head guides elbow to wrist. So we had to first realign and get his scapula to function properly.
Interesting. Isn't that pretty much everyone?
Shoulder and elbow problem.
I feel like that's everyone. Every shoulder injury I've ever had is because I don't have my scapula.
There's no question, because the scapula is the anchor to the glenohumeral joint.
Yeah.
I was talking to a kid. My wife for Christmas bought me I go to One Stop to buy my protein shakes all the time. And the one kid asked me about shoulder issues, and I just turned it around and did a quick assessment. I said, your scapula is horrible. The scapulohumeral rhythm, as you laterally abduct your arm, that first 30 degrees is just a scapular setting phase. But when you raise your arm, it's supposed to be 2 degrees of abduction to 1 degree of, movement of the scapula. You're way off. In fact, your scapula sits beyond, 3 inches from that, the spine. It's like 4 or 5, so you're tremendously internally rotated, which means, number one, you're pressing too much. You're not doing any thoracic extension work. The body has to be in proper alignment to function properly. So even with these guys, because they're running and banging into each other,
that's an asymmetry too.
We have to correct it. We have to correct it.
I've had all kinds of, and I think CrossFit is responsible for a lot of that. Is the
CrossFit's responsible for a lot of issues. All it is a feeder system to PT clinics, orthopods, and chiropractors. And God bless Glassman, because he has more money than I'll ever have in my entire life. And before I go on a rant about CrossFit, if I was 18, 20, 22 years old, I probably wouldn't have done it. Classic type A alpha male.
Yeah.
I'm going to the gym to beat myself up, and I'm not if I'm not coming out of the gym with my tongue dragging on the ground or in a pool of sweat, it's a horrible workout.
Right.
And then I got smarter as I got older. I learned the difference between eustress and distress. I want to feel good after a workout. I don't want to feel like I'm just beat the piss. Anybody can make a workout hard. Anybody can. I have 2 daughters. My dog could make a workout hard. But to do Olympic, CrossFit is pulling the body in many different directions, because you can't develop every energy system in one workout. But God bless him, it's a cult. And that's what he has developed, a cult. And just like Charles Manson, this guy talks about being all about fitness. Yet he all I hear about how much this guy drinks and how fat and out of shape he is. That's like me being a strength coach and never have lifted a weight before, which there are some guys like that. And, in my profession now, especially in college, strength coaches have become nothing more than cheerleaders. Listen, you're not showing me how tough you are by standing on a sideline when it's 30 degrees out and only a T-shirt. All you're showing me is how fucking dumb you are. I get cold. When we were in Green Bay, I was so covered up. When I went in to go to the bathroom at halftime to pee, it took me 20 minutes to find my little guy. And by the time I put him back, we were halfway through the third quarter. That's how bundled up I was. So you're not showing how tough you are by standing on a sideline with no clothes.
I was going to ask you that. How much of this is, I mean, you're obviously a scientist and into the methodology.
No, I'm not a scientist. I just read every day.
Yeah, but an autodidact. You're into the training and the mechanisms and all the best thing. But I see a lot of strength coaches for colleges or whatever. They're a guy that gets in the gym and they're the guy that yells at them,
screams the whole entire time,
and gets them lifting weights and that works a lot. There are different motivating factors that can make you lift. CrossFit, the whole motivation is you're competing, you're looking to beat the guy next to you.
That's alpha male,
right? And then I've seen in weightlifting gyms, you get the whole. I don't know if you've seen the video of. Is it Saquon Barkley or whatever? What's his name? The
running back, yeah.
And he's cleaning like 4.
And the entire team's around.
Yeah, and they're screaming.
And here's the problem I have with that. You're asking for a maximum effort under a heightened emotional environment and an emotional response from that individual. Are you going to reproduce that environment and that response every time they train? You can't.
Right.
I've seen colleges where they come out dressed as their favorite WWE wrestler. They're in a heightened emotional response, a heightened emotional state, highly emotional and highly sympathetic environment. You can't create that every day in training. So you can't base your max off of what you just did.
Right.
Louis Simmons changed my life. Him and Charles Poliquin back in 97. First when Louis came to visit me at Pitt, then I went to visit him, and then I went to the Mega Power Conference in Cleveland where Charles and Louis spoke. Nobody knew who neither of them were at the time. So only about 25 people in the audience. And I've learned more about strength from Louis than anybody. But you have to apply it to your sport. Do we do West Side? We do a modified version of what I'll call West Side.
Right.
But we don't go strict. The only people that train West Side are the people that train in West Side.
Right.
So strength is important, but in my sport, it's not the end all to be all. My good friend James Smith, who's one of the most intelligent people in the world, will say, getting stronger is like falling out of a boat and hitting water.
What's James Smith's book?
Applied Sprint Training and his Global Dynamics, which really I think every coach should have, because it should, over some point in time, and I will not be alive when that happens, should change the way practice schedules and practices are run over time. But like anything, once you upset status quo, nobody wants to upset status quo. Nobody wants to hear that. It takes time for change because everybody's going to criticize you first. And everybody's going to say, call you names. But James wrote probably one of the most important books that will ever be written in my lifetime as far as when it comes to practicing, the actual practicing and application of the sporting activity. And once people start to understand that, you'll have a lot less injuries. You'll have a lot more control or a taxonomy or autonomy over practice, which is what really physical preparation coaches should.
Sure.
But coaches always want more time.
Well, it's funny you say this because you were talking about specified training for different individual athletes. You've got, what is it for? How many guys on an NFL team?
I have 90 guys once we start our off-season program, and that gets cut down to 53 during the season, and you have 10 on practice.
And so you're in a weight room with all these guys, probably different times, but sometimes a lot of them in there at the same time, and yet you're still running a session where they've got specified programming. And this is the point I'm getting to is group fitness training. I don't believe in what I've done CrossFit, that the scalability, we'll lower the weights or don't do this or don't do that. Sometimes, and they will say to you, hey, you can't go overhead, so instead of that, doing that. But I believe there should be a more specified program. Like each one of your clients is your client, and you should have a specified program for that person. And that's why this concept of everybody coming in and doing the same thing at the exact same time.
That's a cookie cutter program generated to make money.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, believe it or not, that's what a lot of college programs do, is they just run a cookie cutter program where everybody does the same thing. Some people will get better over time. Some will stay the same. Some will get worse, and the majority of them will just hit a plateau.
But how hard is it to be in the room with all those guys? And
it's extremely difficult because I spend a lot of time, and I'm not a technology geek. I hate my computer. I have one of my assistants, Evan Lauder, and I have two great assistants, and Vern Stevens and Evan Lauder. When Evan literally hears me say the MF word, he just gets out of his chair and comes back in and says, "What's wrong now?" But I spent an inordinate amount of time reading. My desk looks like Einstein's did, which I'm not comparing myself to Einstein. But it's cluttered. It's a cluttered mess. And, Einstein said, if a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, what then is an empty desk a sign of? Let me give you a hint. Empty mind. Those are OCD people or whatever they want to call themselves. But yeah, I write a lot of different programs. I run around with a sheet that just had everybody's names on it, correcting asymmetries. Thank God Vern and Evan are able to pick up the load with the other guys. And you got guys who are going to come in on Monday morning who are so beat up from the game that they can't do what you have planned.
Sure. So
you better have a plan B, like Tam Path says. You're not going to have plan A all the time. You better have a plan B and a plan C, but make plan B and C as close as possible to plan A. So you got to be able to think on your feet very fast. You just can't say, well, you're going to do it anyway.
So let's do a hypothetical, but use someone as an example like Larry Fitzgerald. You work with Larry Fitzgerald, one of the most talented wide receivers to ever play the game, just a talented athlete everywhere. How would you work with like a Larry Fitzgerald? What would, just to make sure he's not getting injured, or do you want to get Larry faster? Do you want to get Larry stronger? What are you going to do with
Larry's 34 years old, so his ability to get faster is not going to happen. Let's just be honest. He is a consummate pro. He lives the life of a professional football player. When he dives in the end zone to catch a ball during a game, he's done that in practice. I mean, he'll leave his feet in practice. He doesn't like letting the ball hit the ground. So usually on Monday and Tuesday's a mandatory day off in the NFL, Larry doesn't show up. Larry will come in Monday, do some of the active dynamic warm-up, get loose, because I love whatever encourages blood flow, and we do blood flow work to improve recovery through low intensive work. He'll do, but then he knows, and I know that he needs Monday and Tuesday off. Wednesday, he doesn't even practice. People forget when I was with the University of Pittsburgh, Hines Ward never practiced. He played a game.
Really?
Larry ain't going to forget how to play the game.
Right.
He's been doing it for 15 years at a high level.
Right.
He's not going to forget. The only thing he needs to see is the X's and O's.
Right.
But, that's specific to Larry Fitzgerald.
Interesting.
When same with Carson. Carson would tell me, buddy, I feel like crap today. I say, okay, here's what we're going to do so you can feel a little better. And obviously, when he and I would go through that process, he'd feel better, and he'd come in the next day and he said, you were right. Because I understand it's my job to know them better than they know themselves.
So you're saying it's taking these guys sometimes 6 days to recover for that game.
A couple years ago, Anthony Paroli, who was my assistant, now the head strength coach at Mississippi State, we did heart rate variability after a game, and it showed that guys did not start to recover till Wednesday.
Wow.
You got to remember.
How did you do that with heart rate variability?
We used a heart rate.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, what you saw their heart rate during the game, and then what?
We came in. We were tracking their heart rate the whole time, which a lot of people do through things like BioForce, and I've used BioForce to track my own training.
Yep.
And here's what's funny about that: you talk about there's a number of different effects when you train. There's acute, there's immediate, there's cumulative, there's residual, and then there's delayed. So I remember using BioForce, and it came up red, which means take the day off or substantially decrease. I went in and set a PR. Here's the problem was 3 days later when I was green, I pulled a groin muscle.
Interesting.
So now you have to ask yourself, was that the residual delayed effect for me not paying attention to what my heart rate said? And I understand heart rate variability is very sensitive. I can change it just by taking you through an easy, active, dynamic, low intensive dynamic warm up. But over time, Anthony was tracking these guys, and there were certain numbers that we looked at. And after the game, those numbers didn't start coming back up till Wednesday. So Wednesday, a lot of these guys really aren't recovered, but you got to ask yourself this. If you're a power lifter, if you're an Olympic lifter, or you're an elite sprinter or elite track athlete, can you compete every weekend at the highest level against the best in the world? No, you can't do that.
No.
Ask any power lifter to do that. You can't do that.
No.
Ask any bodybuilder to do that. They can't do that. I was competing up until my 50s. And when I stopped competing at 50, I did 3 shows in 4 weeks. About killed me.
Yeah.
I got to my last show, which was the Pittsburgh, obviously my hometown, and I was literally squatting 135 for 8 reps. I was gassed.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you can't maintain that. That's the stress of the game of competing at any level.
My high school track coach was a really smart guy. I used to coach at Pitt, Jay Seward, and he said to me, in the beginning of the year, I'd be running really slow, And he would say to me, don't worry. And I was like, but how am I going to be in the state championships when I'm running times that are in the 110 meter high hurdles, like, second and a half off of what I can. And he said, you're going to peak. You're going to peak when you should peak.
So there's periodization.
Yeah. And he said, I'm training you to peak. All these other guys that are running these times now, they're going to be burnt out by the time we get to, the qualifiers and the states. And
the guy had a plan for you.
Yeah.
You're not going to be at your utmost level every week in and week out. I mean, it's just impossible. The human body doesn't function that way.
Going back to CrossFit, now they have these competitions, and they've got the CrossFit Games, and they've broken out. They used to have an open, a regional, and the games. And now what they've done is they have these events, kind of like golf, all over the world. And you can go to one of these games, and if you win it, then you go to the games. So they still have the open that the whole world tries to get into. But they're having these things, and there's money involved. So you can win $100,000.
Let me tell you something. If there's money involved, there's PEDs involved.
Well, they've already been busting everybody.
I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Once you put something out in front of somebody, like a gold medal, the title of best in the world, a significant financial award, you're going to have PEDs, because they're all on the elite level. You're trying to look for that edge.
Right.
And that edge is just a blink of an eye sometimes.
Yep.
Now, like I said, I don't believe in the CrossFit style of training. Never have. When somebody says there's no science involved in training, that tells me all these books I've read all my life and I've been reading for the last 15, 20 years, I'm just wasting my time. But it's just, like I said, it's wrong what they do. You can't do Olympic lifting for, high reps. And what's amazing to me about this cult is they wear their injuries like a badge of courage. I got injured today. What were you doing? I was doing 20 reps with 95 pounds on a snatch. Blew my shoulder. Oh, that's nothing to be proud of. That's not training. If you're getting injured in training, then you're not controlling your volumes and intensities, and you're not recovering.
So their argument against that would be, and I've heard this many times, and I do agree with this to some extent. They would say, well, you should properly learn the movement before you do it that many times at that level, and you shouldn't be doing it until you have that form down, and you'd watch the guys who are the top level guys that aren't getting injured, and it's because they've got that form down so properly that they're not going to injure
themselves. And that's years and years of training.
Sure.
These people are just walking into a very competitive, high stress environment because everybody's competing against everybody else. I love watching people doing 50-inch box jumps on YouTube or Instagram. First of all, you're not a 50-inch vertical jumper. All you did is just showed me how mobile your hips were because you just stuck your head in your ass. That's not a box jump. If you talk about box jumping, it teaches them to produce force into the ground and teaches them to land because you bring the ground up to them. If you can't land in the position you take off in or pretty close to it, box is too high. If the box is too low, just jump higher. That's all you got to do. But these guys are doing 60-inch box jumps. You don't have a 60-inch vertical jump. You're not box jumping 60 inches. You got great hip mobility.
Yeah.
And you're not landing properly.
Right.
And you're jumping off and you're just falling right back down.
Yeah.
It just amazes me how ridiculous and how, I don't know how I want to put this. Maybe I should ask my wife for the proper word, but how, we are so impressed by stupidity.
Yeah.
In this country. And that's what it is. It's frickin' stupidity, but that's what you have to tell your athletes, here's why we're doing this training. And I try to explain to my guys on a daily basis what we're doing and why we're doing it. Here's why we're developing the aerobic system.
Because you do run into problems, I assume, in the NFL where these guys are elite athletes and they're like you're always seeking knowledge. They're always going, hey, I heard this guy's training with this guy, or this guy's being coached by this guy and he got him stronger.
Yeah, you hear all that all the time. And, but here's one thing I do with my athletes. There's always options. Mm-hmm. In other words, I think the squat is a great exercise. I think it's been bastardized over time by the functional movement gurus, but not everybody squats. There are options that my guys can take. Some guys prefer to do trap bar pulls. Go ahead. It's still a stimulus. That's what people don't get. It's a stimulus. My guys aren't going on a platform to compete in the bench, squat, deadlift, or clean. It's a stimulus. There can be multiple stimuluses to accomplish the same thing. We throw the shit out of med balls. Mm-hmm. I don't do Olympic lifting with my guys. The process of attaining sports mastery is too hard. Why'd I introduce something that was going to be more difficult or more technically demanding when they really can't bench or squat properly? If you don't believe me, come watch some of my guys squat and bench when they come from colleges. It's not about just putting another plate on the bar and getting it up any way you can. It's about doing it properly.
Sure.
It's about making, each muscle has a job to do. Let those muscles, that tissue, do their job. Don't override them or bypass them just because I want to get as much weight up on the bar as I can. That shows me nothing. If anything, that develops more asymmetries and more issues that I have to correct over time. So we're fanatical on technical skill and technical application, but we also understand, you don't want to squat today? We can belt squat. We can goblet squat. We can trap bar pull. We can front squat. There's multiple variations because all it is, it's a stimulus. That's all it is. People don't understand. It's just a fucking stimulus. You can maintain a squat pattern just by squatting with body weight. Now, we do an assessment on our guys when they come. So we get an idea of, who needs more ankle mobility, who needs more internal rotation in their hips. And we try to keep them in, the numbers that myself and Tom Reed and Brett Fisher, our PT, and Chad Cook and David and Jeff have put together. So these guys are proper alignment to do what we ask them to do. And again, it's just a stimulus. There's options our guys can take. Some days guys don't feel like getting under a bar. Don't feel like benching. You can dumbbell bench. You can dumbbell floor press. There's multiple different stimuli we can use. It's the same thing. You're not going to go at the 50-yard line pregame and we're going to see who can bench more. And don't get me wrong. The bench is a great exercise. It's a squat. But it's not what we're competing.
Do you have some guys that are just gym rats that really get in there and get after it?
You get those few.
So that they...
And hopefully they're offensive linemen.
Yeah. Yeah.
That should be part of their DNA is I need to be in the weight room. Because if it's not part of your DNA, then you shouldn't be an offensive lineman.
So how many of these guys are genetically gifted? Because I remember Anthony Dorsett when I was at Pitt. The guy could run a 10-200 and he could bench press 415 pounds. And he was just a freak and he did hit the gym a lot. You look at him from Tony Dorsett, his father, to him, he was a different, genetically.
No question, because I helped train Anthony Dorsett, younger one.
Just a giant.
Remember, there's two factors that determine everything in life. One is those genetics. That's what we're innately born with. You can't change that. You can't select your parents. Ralph Mann wrote a book on hurling and sprinting techniques, and he identifies, I think it's 7 performance limiting factors. And of all those performance limiting factors, we only have control over, guess what? 1, developmental. Everything else is given to you through your parents. So pick your parents properly. The second thing is your environment. That's how you play the cards nature has dealt you. Nature doesn't deal everybody the same cards. We have a great running back in David Johnson, who I tell people, he went to Northern Iowa. He didn't go to a big time Division I school. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL. David, and you have to understand where David is coming from, his driving motivational forces, because he didn't have a great life. He wasn't raised with 2 parents. He wasn't raised, his parents didn't buy him a car. David overcame some tremendous adversity. So, in this life, you have to earn things. If you want things to always be given to you, you're going to be in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
Because when the shit hits the fan,
sure,
you're not going to be able to handle it.
Yeah.
We all face adversity. We've all been through it.
Not all of us, this whole new generation.
This whole new generation of enlightenment, I'm going to get out, I'm going to graduate from college. I'm going to make $100,000. I'm going to have a brand new car and they're going to give me a cell phone. The only thing you're entitled to is an opportunity. But my wife's a teacher, and she'll tell you how bad kids are nowadays.
Yeah, I'm hearing it too.
Part of the problem is parents.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy your kid a car and he doesn't have to earn it, what do you expect?
Yeah.
He's always going to have his hand out.
Yeah.
Looking for something. Gimme. It's just not the way, we were raised. I hate to say we, because I'm going back to the 70s and we only had 3 channels on TV. Nobody had a cell phone. And guess what? We were healthy and we are today.
Yeah. And people, the argument now is that's the old man syndrome of going, oh, kids today. Well, there is a certain level of, accessibility. I even joke about it with pornography. When you were a kid, you had to
you had to work film you had to steal.
Yeah. Now they just go on the internet and it's there. Everything is so accessible and so easy, and they want everything to be that easy because that's what life now is about, finding how to make everything easier. It's all about that. So, we had a guy on the show not recently, about a year or so ago, who directed a movie called Rise of the Sufferfest. And he was saying how these things like CrossFit and these things like the races, the Spartan races, and all these things lives are becoming too sedentary and too easy because we've made everything so easy.
Technology has made things too. Now, don't get me wrong.
There's an internal sense of I want to go put myself in these situations because my whole life has been too easy.
There are some technological advances which I'm for. Like I was watching, my wife and I were watching TV last night. I think it's called BioDots, where they 3D can make human organs.
Jeez.
My oldest daughter's on a liver transplant list. By the grace of God, she's stable, but she was born with autoimmune chronic active hepatitis.
Oh, wow.
So,
sorry to hear that.
The idea of being able to 3-dimensionally recreate from her cells is great hope.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also things that have just made things too, and listen, and I hate to bring this up because I remember my mother when I was growing up, my mother told me I walked to school uphill to and from school in a blinding snowstorm. And you're like, all right, Mom. But you know what? When I turned, I think 12 years old, my mother would take me to a golf course and I would caddy on weekends. Mm-hmm. When I turned, I also had a paper route where you had to carry your papers.
I did both those things.
Them Sunday papers were 12 times the size of the weekday papers. I'd get a hernia with those 2 big sacks of Sunday papers, walk around the neighborhood, delivering those things. And
worse was collecting.
Yeah, trying to collect money off people. It's only 50 cents. No, I can get you next week. But when I turned 16, my mother had called the school on the last day of being 15. I was handed my work permit. I got home. She walked me over to my neighbor's house, Bud Murphy, whose son, George Murphy, was one of my close friends who passed away a couple years ago. And she said, put him to work. The next night I was pumping gas in a gas station. In other words, I was coming home from football practice or track practice, getting on a streetcar, which let me off right behind a gas station, pumping gas till 11 o'clock at night and then going home.
Yeah.
Because my parents were divorced. My mother was poor. We didn't have any money. So you had to make your own way. I don't think there's ever been one job I've had in my life that I have not had manual labor. I used to work in a steel mill, the Clarendon steel mill, the rolling mills. And that's what motivated me to graduate from college. But my mother remarried my stepfather who had his own construction company. And I always tell this story, and I've told it to my daughters, and I've told it to players. I said, we had 2 weeks off at the beginning of July in the mill. So the older mill guys who were there full time could clean the mill and get paid.
Oh, yeah.
So they laid all the college kids off. I'll never forget.
That's overtime. The shutdown.
Yeah, the shutdown was over for them. But for us, it was unemployment.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I got 2 weeks off. I'm just going to hang out. I'm going to sleep in till noon. I'm going to run around with my friends. On a Monday morning, I hear my mom come up the steps. She pokes her head around the door jam, and she goes, get up. You're going to work with Adolf. And I'm like, what?
Hitler?
No, yeah, that's my stepfather. He was a true Italian. She goes, you're going to work with Adolf. She went halfway back down the steps, and then I hear her come back up again. And I'm like, what can she possibly tell me now? And she goes, this is the exact quote, and excuse my language. She goes, and don't you fucking embarrass me. And then walk back down the steps. So the first day on the job, I'm with my stepfather's one of his sons, Victor, and we're driving around a dump truck. My stepfather says, meet me at the Carnegie Steel Mill. So I'm like, all right. So we get to the steel mill. I think this is going to be easy. I'm going to ride around a dump truck all day with Victor and just deliver stuff to construction sites. So we get there and there's a ditch. It's got to be 5 feet deep, 3 feet wide, and it runs 100 yards. But there's a backhoe. And I know Victor, Adolf's son, can run a backhoe. And we get out and I'm like, all right. Victor will fill in the, he pulls out of his station wagon 2 shovels, puts them in the dirt and says, fill in the ditch.
Fill in the ditch.
Fill in the ditch. I'm like, Abe, there's a backhoe right there. He goes, fill in the ditch. I'll be back in 8 hours. 8 hours later, I shoveled dirt for 8 straight hours. There was no break. He didn't bring us lunch. I didn't have lunch. We weren't allowed to leave the site, but that was the first day of working with my stepfather. And the next 2 weeks, I was so happy to get back to the steel mill and work. I was working for him, but I'll never forget my mother telling me, don't you fucking embarrass me. Nowadays, you do that to a kid, they'll have you in court. I'm taking my parents to the court because they told me to go to work.
Well, that is why so many great athletes came out of Western Pennsylvania, was because you had that steel mill working class background where these guys came from Eastern Europe, or, you had the Hungarians and the Germans and the Croatians and all these people.
Well, you look at Pittsburgh too, they value their sports.
Sure.
Some cities, sports are just another reason to drink and eat. In Pittsburgh, I always tell my wife, football is a religion. You're going to play football. My mother said when I turned 15, you're going to play for the high school, or you're going down to the Youth Catholic League.
I felt like a failure because I didn't make it to college football. I felt like a complete and utter failure. Like that was my I was raised to do that.
That's what you do in Western Pennsylvania.
And I was fast enough, but I wasn't big enough or strong enough. And I remember, one of my track coaches said, "Don't stop football. You can have a really good career running, stop football." And then when I was in college, Pitt was really bad at football, and Johnny Majors just came in, and he came out to the track team and he said, "You guys should all come out for the team. We need bodies." And they looked at me.
They needed sacrificial lambs.
Yeah, and I said, I don't want to get hit. I said I had enough of that.
I'll never forget the first time I took a shot, and I got up and I was like, my mother came home. My mother said, "You're not quitting. You should go back to practice. So just take your stuff off. Let me wash it." And guaranteed walk to St. Joan of Arc's practice field a couple miles away and practice the next day. But yeah, I never forget the first time I took a shot. I was like, Jesus Christ, I don't know if but then it becomes part of you. And then you thrive on hitting other people.
Sure.
If you don't like being hit, you can't play football.
Yeah.
It's a simple fact.
I didn't like getting hit. I liked hitting. I liked being the force going at the person.
It is a brutal sport.
It's
a gladiator sport.
It is a gladiator.
And I admire the men who play on this level.
Sure.
Because and here's what the general public doesn't understand: how fast this game is played.
So fast
in the NFL. How violent the hits
I just saw in the top 40 times at the combine that there was a guy, I think he's from Pitt, who ran. He's 295 pounds, 300 pounds almost. Ran a 4.840.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Kids are getting bigger, stronger, and faster nowadays because they're training sooner. Remember when we grew up? If you lift weights, you're going to become muscle bound and become slow.
That's what they told you.
And then people started to figure out, and I started figuring out when I was running track for Pitt, you know what? I heard of a guy named Harvey Glantz, who was a sprint coach at Auburn, but was on the 4x100 meter world record relay team for the USA. And everybody made a big fuss because Harvey Glantz could bench 350 pounds. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I put two and two together in my mind. Well, Harvey Glantz can do it. He got stronger, he got faster. So that's how I started venturing into the weight room, and actually went to Jackie Sherrill and asked permission to use the varsity football players' weight room, because in Trees Hall, which is what a student weight room was, the old equipment was old, antiquated, but there was always 1,000 people up there from those prime times.
I remember that,
Jim. And I'm not one of those. My wife is an early morning person. She likes to get out and get going. I'm staying in bed till 9 o'clock. Yeah. I might think about turning over around 10. And I may see you about 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm a comedian. That's 11's like when the eyes open up. As I have a kid now, it's a lot earlier. She's like, "Dad, get up," and then punches me in the head.
Yeah, our kids are grown and raised, so I don't have to. So I'm very fortunate. My wife just lets me sleep in. She we'll go play tennis. But during the season, you're up at 4:45 in the morning. And you're at work before 5:30.
Wow.
And I know I'm what I call a stress trainer. When I experience a lot of stress, I got to go to the gym when I know I shouldn't. So you even get this year I controlled myself a little more, and I did not. There was the last couple of seasons I got deathly ill at the end of the season.
So what are you saying? You're suppressing your immune system when you're already at a high stress level?
Oh my God, yeah,
yeah.
You're running at 1,000 miles an hour, so that offsets it. And like I said, then you hit that brick wall, and all of a sudden the season's done.
Yep. And
you're still running at that level.
Yeah.
That engine is still, those RPMs are still being revved, expecting.
So what's your program? You say when the season ends, you kind of bring your athletes down. What's kind of a general idea, or is that
I use
your secret sauce you don't like to give
my
up?
secret sauce is all just Charlie France's basement bike tempo work. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Charlie. And all it is it's development aerobic system, a warm up on the bike with some activation and mobility work. And then it goes to, I'm going to go, depending on position now. Mm-hmm. So as a lineman, I may sprint on the bike for 35 seconds between 90 and 100 RPMs at level 5. When I'm done with that 35-second sprint, I get off and I do 10 push-ups, and I get back on the bike. So the recovery is active, but it's low intense enough so my guys aren't entering in to a glycolytic environment.
Okay.
They're staying, within that aerobic development. Their heart rate is staying under the anaerobic threshold. So it's all aerobic system, aerobic development for 2 weeks, and it's every other day.
Interesting.
It acts as a transition period into just abruptly stopping. Now, again, like Mato told me, he says, they're not going to do it. And I'm like, you're exactly right. They're not. But at least I'm going to make the attempt on my end to say, here's how we transition from being high sympathetic dominant to just easing into total time off.
Okay. So your quarterbacks are everybody knows a football team a lot of times built around a quarterback in the NFL. You've got these guys that are your premier franchise player. their shoulders are the most delicate thing in the whole world.
Their arm care and shoulder care is optimal.
I was just going to say
to our athletes.
What the heck are you doing with that?
I do the quarterbacks individually and personally. They're my personal responsibility. And a lot of my stuff goes back to Eric Cressy and Mike Robertson, the things I've learned from their courses. So a lot of stuff is, all scapula guided. We look at the assessment of, upward rotation. Does that scapula anteriorly tilt, or is it stay in a posterior tilt, which is perpendicular to ground, as a forward flex? We look at everything we can possibly look at. And those are the things we corrected on Josh, and where Josh had no more shoulder or elbow problems. And that's the key, because and again, I monitor their throwing it during practice. I did the same thing for Carson. I did the same thing for Drew. And I had Carson dialed in, where I knew how many throws he could make at the beginning of the week, and it was undulated. So it wasn't the tabletop. It wasn't he's going to throw the same. He'd have a high day, a low day, and a medium day. This year I found what worked best for Josh was he had a high day, medium, and then a low day. So I'd communicate to the quarterback coach, which this year was Brian Leftwich, and I'd say he can only throw this many throws today, and don't go over it. Now, there was a 3 to 5 plus or minus that I would say, I'm okay with that. But I would just tell him, bring him back down today. This is all he's allowed to throw. And Byron has listened to me.
And Leftwich was at a Marshall, right?
Yes, yeah. Byron Leftwich, and he played for the Steelers. So I knew Byron because I watched him practice when I was at Pitt. Same with Larry Foote. Those guys are two of the closest people on the staff to me because I watched them practice every day.
So say you're taking a quarterback in and you know his ability and his capacity for his shoulder. Is the quarterback coach taking that into account when he's playing him in a game, going, hey, we got
No, game's a completely different chaotic situation.
You
this
just
is
go
what we
all
need.
out.
This is what we're going to do. That's why that Friday, his throws dropped tremendously, so I can acts as a feeder into what's going to happen Sunday.
But I'm surprised that
then Monday and Tuesday he does not throw.
But I'm surprised at that with baseball. Baseball, you can bring in a relief pitcher where you go, hey, I'm worried about this guy's
Remember,
shoulder.
relief pitcher is different than from starter.
Sure.
So there's pinnacle and prime work capacity. There was a book written a long time ago, the best damn sports training book ever written. I don't know if you can find it on the internet anymore. It's written by a guy named Brad Nuttenshell, who I don't even know if that's his real name, but it talks about prime and pinnacle work capacity. So it depends on you if you're a starter or a reliever. And again, I refer back to all shoulder issues to Eric Cressy and Mike Robertson, because that's where I learned everything from. And those two are the smartest young men I've ever been around, And then you had a guy like Mike Gadango, who's at Freak Strength in New Jersey, and his work with Chris Hogan and the McCourty brothers. That speaks volumes for how they train athletes. Not everybody gets that opportunity to train. Listen, anybody can train a high school kid. No matter what you do is going to work, simply because you're doing something.
Right.
When you deal with an elite athletes, you can't make mistakes. There has to be a plan, and that plan has to have variations and has to take into account, like I said, the uncertainty of readiness for the day, and has to take into account the responsiveness to loading for that day. So that plan is always subject to change. They say failing to plan is planning to fail, but what they don't tell you is nothing ever goes according to plan. I've never seen anybody write a 12-week program, stay to it, and predict this we're going to be 12 weeks from now. Philip Telek, in Martin Bissinger's book that he wrote on Training Talk, I think they were talking to John Keeley, who was a guy who's really begun to question periodization as I had. I don't think periodization is a rule or a law. I think it's just a concept.
Sure.
It's a generalized overall plan of how we look at things, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. But understanding that's going to be subject to change. And he talks about a guy named Philip Telek. The government brought him in and they asked him to do a study on the effectiveness of predictors. And he found that all these great economic predictors, weather predictors, all these experts across the world, their ability to predict was about as effective as chimpanzees throwing darts.
Well, they've done that with the stock market. They've put those.
So you can't predict anything.
Those gurus up against the dartboard, and they've put, who was it? Warren Buffett did that with the guys with the hedge funds and he said, okay, you guys, you hedge fund traders that everybody puts your billions of dollars with. He's like, I'll just take a fund. I'll take like an S&P fund and put it up against any of you. We'll bet $1 million, and I'll bet you my S&P fund. Just a the regular stock market, the Standard & Poor's funds that they've picked, like an across the board kind of generalization. And he said, I'll go against you for 10 years and we'll see who does. You're the highest paid hedge fund gurus in the world. I'm just going to pick this like averages. And one thing is they threw out the top and the bottom. Like They got to pick 10 stocks or whatever it was for their fund. They got to throw out 10 funds because there's going to be anomalies, so they throw those out.
There's going to be outliers and everything.
Yeah. So he does it, and sure enough, I think one guy took him up on it. It was $1 million bet or something, and sure enough, Buffett
lost
won.
$1 million.
Buffett won, telling him, you guys, you can't predict this stuff.
There's nothing that's predictable in this world. They can't predict the weather.
Yeah.
How can you predict where somebody after training is going to be 12 weeks from now? Now, again, you can recreate a highly sympathetic environment where they get fired up. You got dry ice everywhere and you're playing their music and it's so loud that you can't even hear yourself think and everybody's screaming and patting them on the back. Well, if that's the number you're going to base their training off, you're going to overtrain them to death because they're not going to hit those numbers in training because they're not going to be able to recreate that same environment every day. So if you're going to do something like that, you better take a 10% reduction in what they did. So if a kid squatted 700, I would take at least a 5% reduction in what he did on that day to account for the uncertainty of training readiness on a daily basis and responsiveness to load.
Sure.
Because you can't recreate that.
Okay, so now taking this into CrossFit, you've got these guys that are performing such high volume. Like volume is an astronomical number. And they're doing sometimes 3 workouts a day. And there are...
But here's what you're seeing. You're seeing the survivors. You're not seeing the people that are broken down.
Sure, but...
Remember the old Bulgarian method? The old Bulgarian method was max effort constantly, 3 times a day, all year long. The problem was you saw those who were the survivors who were built to handle and tolerate that. And then again, that goes back to what you can handle as an individual and it's understanding that what some guys can do, I can't.
Well, to defend CrossFit, when they have the open where anybody can sign up to compete, I think like 350,000 people worldwide pay $20 to join up to this. You already know there's only going to be this 0.01% that's possible, that's going to go to
the CrossFit
the 45 guys and girls at the end of the day that make it to these games, and they are genetic freaks. They
are your outliers who do nothing else.
They
don't have a job.
No job.
Most of them don't have a job. And they live off of that.
And they work out constantly. But it amazes me still that their bodies have, and if you look at where they started, 12 years ago with CrossFit, and like James Fitzgerald won the CrossFit Games, the first game ever. And now you look at the difference in the workout James did, back then I could almost do. The workout they're doing now, I couldn't even fathom.
So over time, what you're seeing is those that can handle that are the survivors. Mm-hmm. So just like the Bulgarian method, you didn't see the guys that were sitting in a corner smoking cigarettes and drinking vodka who were broken down and couldn't handle that.
Sure.
So there's a selection process. Not everybody's going to survive that selection process. And again, it does come back to genetic tolerance. What can I handle? Or more importantly, how have I built up my chronic workloads over time?
Sure.
Assist adaptation through gradation. They just don't go into the first day and just go balls to the wall, and set up high volumes.
Right.
Some people will be able to survive that. Most will not.
Right.
When back in 2001, when we were at Cleveland, I was with the Cleveland Browns with Tommy Myslinski. Everybody became enamored with Jay Schrader and what he did for Adam Archuleta. So we came out here to visit and we talked to Jay. And, he talks about dropping Adam from 10 feet in the air. I'm like, that's not what he did the first day. Show me what he did over time.
I'm not familiar with this.
To get to the process.
Well, he was dropping him from 10 feet.
Well, Jay uses weights like plyometrics.
Okay.
So the Evo Sport, which I think is, I don't even know if it's on the internet anymore, but Jay does have a gym over here. It's actually a mile from our training and practice facility. But, he was doing, rebound benches, dropping and catching. Sure. He's the first one who talked about the art machine and stimulation during glute ham raises or doing movements. And he talked about the value of ice massage and, lay on the bench, put a bag of ice right there in the xiphoid process. Obviously, you're going to become sympathetic. You become shocked. So obviously, your ability to produce greater force is going to be better.
Sure.
And there's always tricks to the trade.
It's like the guys using smelling salts and stuff like that.
Yeah, everybody, they're all looking for that edge.
Yeah.
But when Jay would talk, he would talk about some of the things Adam was doing. I'm like, well, that's not what he did the first day.
Right.
You didn't come in and have him drop off a 40-inch box and altitude drop and see if he could stick it and stay. Show me where you started from as you gradually raised his chronic workload over time, because it's those acute spikes.
Yep.
That'll get you into trouble.
Sure, and I'm a victim of all those. When doing this show, I've been introduced to so many different devices and strength techniques and training programs. And I like to play around. And I remember one of the ones where I learned my lesson was when everybody started using butter in their coffee and MCT oil. I was like, all right, I'll try it. So I went home and I put a tablespoon of butter and a tablespoon of MCT oil in I've never run to the bathroom so quickly in my life. Like I finished my coffee. I didn't finish my coffee. I was like halfway through it and my pants were down and I was in the bathroom and I called the owner of the company and I go, dude, what the fuck just happened to me? And he goes, what'd you do? I said, I put a tablespoon of butter and a tablespoon of MCT. He went, whoa. He goes, you got to work up to that. You can't just do that right away.
Here's what people don't understand. And this is even strength coaches. There is no one perfect program. Of all the variables we had to manipulate as strength coaches, sets, reps, tempo, speed of contraction, exercise selection, sequence of events, whether I vertical or horizontal load, most people don't know the difference between vertical and horizontal loading, whether I use one set or multiple sets, whether I train 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 times a week or 1 or 2 times a day, all those variables have their own benefits and drawbacks. There's not one perfect variable. So if there cannot exist one perfect variable, there cannot exist a perfect program. So it is science and an art of how you apply that science. Tommy and I used to talk all the time. Sometimes I see guys, you just get an intuition, a feeling about them, and you can know what they can handle right away. I know my guys because I work with them every day. I see them every day. I know what they can and can't handle. I know when they're having a bad day. I know we're about to have a good day just by how they carry themselves into the warm-up area. Listen, if your guys are just laying on a foam roller in your tissue prep and there's not one word being said, you better be able to change because they're not ready for the workout you have ready unless it's highly aerobic or recovery in nature. And you have to account for that. For every intensive workout, like Charlie Francis' vertical integration periodization, there should be a day where they recover.
And when you're talking about this, you're talking about top athletes too, because on a lower level, when you've got kids and you're trying to prep them, sometimes it's a little bit like they're not ready. Go bust your
young
ass.
Kids, their systems can handle anything. That's why they're young. The youth is wasted on the young people. I remember when I was young too, what I could do. I could just walk into a gym, not even bother warming up, and throw 365 in the bar and start squatting. Now, I got on a bike for 20 minutes. I don't even put a bar on my back because my shoulders, I have no mobility in my shoulders. I got a belt squat. And I can't get under those loads because over time, you just get beat up.
I got a funny little story about that. My little nephew is, he's 11 and he's been working out. He was like a chubby little kid and I started getting him to work out and I'd give him a workout every day and he would do it. And I wasn't around him. So I'd call him. He's in New York and I was always worried. I don't want him to get hurt. It's calisthenic stuff. And, just
the things we did in high school growing up, which was phys ed class.
Yeah.
You don't have that anymore.
Yeah. Some schools don't have phys ed. They don't even have it. But I said to him one day, and he's building up and he's getting pretty good and his times and his runs are getting faster. And one day I said to him, I go, and I'm always like, he'll get me. I'm like, I got to write him something. And it's just to keep him moving, because I don't know what I'm doing. I have no science to it. I said, okay, do 1 push up, 1 sit up, one squat. I said, first minute, push up, second minute. And I go, then after you do 1, 2, 2, 2. 3, 3, 3. And I go, just keep going. Just keep going. He's like, how long? I said, until you can't do any push-ups. He goes, then what? I go, then do sit-ups and squats. And he goes, then what? I go, you're going to run out of sit-ups, then do just squats. And he's like, okay. And I just let it go. I get a text back and he goes, I forget what round. I guess he got to something like 33 on the squats.
Jesus.
And I did the math, 1 plus 2 plus 3.
Yeah.
He did 666 squats. And I went, oh no. Oh no. I go, I called his mom and I go, he's not going to be able to walk for a week. I said, I'm sorry. I didn't know he would do that. And I went, I feel he's going to really hurt. I called him the next day and I go, how are your legs? And he goes, eh. And I went, what do you mean, eh? I'd be in the hospital right now if I did 666
being young, I remember that stupid stuff I did when I was young, but no matter what program you write, they're going to adapt to it.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to change at some point in time. I mean, let's face it. The body is an adaptable organism. It thrives on, those adaptations. But here, I look at what people are saying we're not a functional society. We're dysfunctional. We have all these horrible movement patterns. You know what? I could cure every horrible movement pattern or every movement dysfunction by one reason. Get your kids off the computer, let them go outside and play.
Yeah, play.
And solve movement problems in chaotic environments. Let them play. Let them play pickup games. But every game now is played on what? The TV and a computer. Kids don't get off their ass. I love the commercial on TV where the kid's just laying there in bed and he calls his grandmother for another soda. Hey, Grandma, can you get me another soda? And she just rolls her eyes. But that's Youth of America. They play the game on the TV. I didn't have computer games for my kids growing up.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, my mother said, get outside and get some sunshine. It's raining out. Still get the ultraviolet rays from the sun behind the clouds.
Yep.
Get outside. And don't come home until the streetlights come on.
Yep.
Now you can't do that because no kid will move off his ass from playing a game on computer.
Nope.
So Bill Gates and all his crew are smarter than me or have more money, but you've actually ruined
society. Yep.
You've ruined the youth of America. Because in my day, and I hate to say this all the time, you played pickup games and you played them between neighborhoods. We had my brothers and I grew up with 4 brothers. And we were all athletic. We all played football. We had the Olympics. We dug a long jump pit on the side of the house. Around the house was actually 200 meters, so we ran 200s. We ran 50s on the street. We jumped off of on and off things. And we just had our own mini Olympics, and we invited people from the neighborhood.
Right.
We played street hockey, and we'd go to different neighborhoods and play street hockey. You'd play basketball or wiffle ball in somebody's front yard. But you're always competing against somebody else in your neighborhood.
Sure.
That stuff don't happen.
And not only that, you were using your creative ability. Somebody wasn't just giving you something that you could drone out and zone out and go lose your mind into their game. You had to create, because that's what we did. You created the trails or whatever you were building or building outside or making. You made your own Olympic event, whereas they're not doing that. They're just locking into somebody else's creativity.
You allow your body to figure out complex motor patterns as you participate in a sport. So the body is learning through feedback as the body does something. Now it's just gotten so ridiculous. I don't see kids move anymore.
Yeah, with my daughter, we're trying to really, really, really limit the screen time to as minimal as possible. She's only 4 years old, but I've put her into as many different sporting events as possible that I can put her in. And we do live in an environment where I know a lot of people don't, and we're fortunate enough that I can say, get outside. You're going to go outside, and I go out with her because she doesn't have any.
Even if it's snow out, go outside and go sled riding.
Yeah.
Go outside, build a snowman. Go outside, build a snowball fort. But go outside and throw snowballs and have snowball battles.
I think we're going to pay for this a lot. In fact, the school we send her to, I specifically send her to a school that's play oriented, where they're teaching her already at a young age through play. It's not, hey, let's learn to read. Let's do that. It's let's play. We're just going to play all day long.
Probably the best thing you did for your kid.
Yeah. And they say kids, I've read these studies that say that kids that play up until they're 7 ultimately develop much more intelligently than children that are learning till 7. The kids that they're pushing, and I read this in parentology too, where schools where they really push the kids to testing and learning and everything. The kids that are playing develop so much better in the long run, have higher SAT scores, stuff like that. So I think
when my daughters were young, they all both swam and they both went to dance.
Yeah, we just.
If I'd have had a son, he'd have gone to gymnastics or martial arts.
Yep.
Those 4 things I just talked about allow athletes to, number 1, express movement, develop movement strategies, use their own body as external resistance, but they're beneficial to them from an overall health standpoint. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, again, parents just give a kid a game, let them go play on a game, let them play Wii. That's not where the body has to solve or the brain has to work. Because how the brain appraises the situation is how the body's going to respond. So let the brain appraise situations through play to figure out, so the body can figure out how I'm going to respond in this situation, in this sporting activity. And let your kids play multiple sports. I've always said, all new movements are developed on the basis of old links of coordination. The greater the stock of pull of old reflective driving links, the greater the motor abilities develop. You know what I just said? Let your kid play multiple sports.
Yeah.
I hate when parents say, my kid's only going to play football in the offseason, he's going to lift weights. I said, great, I'll become a better weightlifter. Doesn't mean he's going to become a better football player. Kids have got to play multiple sports, expose them to multiple skills. Unfortunately, because of parents, the early age of specialization is here and it's not going anywhere. My wife has a condo in Saddlebrook, Florida, and you get people from around the world paying mega dollars to go to a tennis school. 1% make it. What are those other kids doing? They're learning one sport, and that's it. Ask them to do anything else, they can't do it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem we face. And that's across the world, and we've created our own toxic environment.
I just heard a funny thing. I'd never heard this, but I was watching a hockey game the other night, and they were saying that a lot of the hockey players are taking figure skating lessons now.
Nothing
that they're
wrong with
taking
that.
figure skating. And I remember when Lynn Swann used to take ballet.
Exactly.
Yeah. Lynn Swann, who was a wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, great. I think 4 Super Bowls.
Plus, he's in the Hall of Fame now.
Yeah, Hall of Famer. And he took ballet to help him with...
To help him maximize on his skill, but more importantly, create greater body awareness.
Yeah.
Understand what my body can do in time and space. And that is only developed through play.
Yeah.
It's only developed at an early age. Don't try to go back and make up for it. I had a kid once who, and I told him, I said, let me see you skip, and he couldn't skip. I turned to his mother, I said, did he go from crawling? Did he just stand up and walk right away? Or did he just roll around the ground and stand up and walk? She goes, yeah. I said, he missed the crawling phase. So he missed an important part of the developmental process. And we all go through the same stages of motor learning.
Yep.
The rate at which we go through those stages is highly specific to each individual. But those laws of motor learning is what everybody goes through. Now, highly intelligent people can pick things up quicker. Remember, Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book on, the 10,000-hour rule. There's highly intelligent people who can learn things faster and just as good in a shorter amount of time, but that's not everybody. You look at on average, to perfect a skill takes time and effort over and over and over again. And once you put something into the nervous system wrong, it's there forever. It takes years and years to correct it. I hate when people say muscle memory.
It's not muscle memory.
It's a neural ingrain. It's ingrained into the nervous
wrapping
system.
the myelin around the nerve bundles.
It's a neural ingrain. It has nothing. The muscle doesn't have a brain. Muscle doesn't remember shit. The only thing the muscle knows how to do is create force.
Yeah.
Create, manipulate force, and that's from the central nervous system. But still, give these kids a chance to get outside. In high schools or grade schools or middle schools, they have to go back to a typical phys ed class. When I first started phys ed, everybody would do jumping jacks, push-ups, sit-ups, burpees, climb the rope. You can't ask a kid to do a jumping jack nowadays. Let's see what you get.
Yeah.
It's totally bastardized.
Yeah.
In anything.
It's pretty ridiculous.
Ask them to do a push-up. I've never seen poor push-ups done by males in my entire life.
I wonder how this ended up getting lost in society. Like, I couldn't believe it when I was just in a place and they go, oh, yeah, I don't know, their school district did away with physical education. I'm like, that's like saying we're doing away with science, or we're doing away with math. And she said, we didn't have the funding. I'm like,
it costs funding to teach a kid to do a push-up or a sit-up. I didn't know that required a lot of equipment.
I don't know.
It required great funds.
I didn't know you couldn't have it instead. I thought it was I thought it was mandatory to have physical education in schools.
No, I don't think it's mandatory anymore. But I'd have to ask my wife.
Well, you ran a gym. Did you not when you were in Buffalo?
Worst thing I've ever done in my life. I'll never do it again. Number one, because I can't stand parents and I can't stand people. If you're a personal trainer, that's great. God bless you. I have to be in an environment where everybody has one goal, and that's to win a championship.
Yeah.
And I thrive on that environment. I thrive going to work every day and working with athletes who are trying to be better than everybody else, trying to win a championship. And I just like the team concept.
Yeah.
I love the team concept. I love being on the sidelines during a game. I love walking out to practice and smelling the grass.
Yeah.
And I love watching people sweat and strain to get better. I'm not a personal trainer, never have been, don't want to be. And I don't ever want to be in that environment again because it's a bad environment for me to try and thrive in.
Well, there's a lot of personal trainers that listen to this that are going to love everything you said because there was so much important stuff. And you have been exceptional. You've done a great job in everything you've done. And it was an honor to be here and talk to you. I mean, I can't tell you. I was so excited.
And that's another thing. That's me. People actually know who I am and actually listen to the stuff that I say that comes out of my mouth. That just amazes me sometimes. My daughters will call me and say, I met this guy, but he knows who you are. I'm like, I don't get that.
Well, I remember meeting you as a little kid and, it doesn't look like you've changed much. And,
no, I'm your typical Pittsburgher. We have a kid, Alan Shipley, on our team. AQ, and AQ went to Moon High School, and he's a Pittsburgher. And it's just funny. Every day we see each other. And when Anthony Paroli was my assistant here in Arizona before he went to Mississippi State, there's a thing between Pittsburghers.
You got the bond. Yep.
Yeah, you don't talk right, number one.
Nope.
but you're not afraid to speak your mind. You're not afraid to roll on the ground with somebody. You're not afraid to tell it how it is.
The roll on the ground, it's so funny because I live in Los Angeles and people will say something to me sometimes and I look at them and I'm like, I'm going to punch you in the fucking face. And I have a little bit of a temper every once in a while. And sometimes it's happened when I'm on stage and somebody will say something and I'll go, hey dude, come up here right now. And people say to me, my wife, they're like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I'm from Pittsburgh. This is what you do.
That's just what we do.
You don't take shit from people and you'll be the nicest person in the world and help them out. But this second,
very territorial.
Yeah.
My wife moved from Buffalo, New York to Pittsburgh when I was at Pitt. And I remember her going food shopping to the Giant Eagle, which is right behind our house, and we were in Cranberry. She said, I can't believe how many people are there. I said, it's Friday. It's football Friday, high school, and then Saturday's college, and then Sunday's the NFL. It's what Pittsburghers live for from July till January.
More people go. I had a couple of jokes. More people go to football on Sunday than they do to church.
No question.
And people will get up earlier to tailgate than they will to go to work. It's
a sports oriented town,
and your sexuality is determined by how many interceptions you throw.
I wasn't a quarterback, so I couldn't. I actually wasn't.
No, they'll just start making gay rumors about you. If you remember when Cordell Stewart threw 5 interceptions,
yeah,
and then the rumor went all over the whole city that he was gay, and it was what we. Way to go, city.
Listen, I have enough problems dealing with my own life. I really don't pay attention to anything else. Like I said, every day I go to work, I just try to be better than everybody else. So it's a constant, I'm an information, hoarder. I hoard information. I hold on to it forever, but I constantly collect and read books. And I'm the type of guy, I can't read one book from start to stop. So I'm reading 4 different books right now.
Yeah, that's great.
And that allows me, number one, cross-reference, but look for common denominators. Like Dan Paff once told me, he goes, you have 12 guys in the Olympic finals for a 100-meter dash. All 12 of them have gotten there by different routes, but there's common denominators. What's the common denominators? Well, here it is. They've done plyometrics, they've lifted weights, they've thrown med balls, and they've done speed work.
Interesting.
It doesn't get too much. That's not that hard. So people are trying to make it hard. And the last thing I'd have to say is, I still have a rant against foot ladders. I think they're the biggest waste of training apparatus I've ever seen. If you're don't talk to me about foot ladders and speed. Short, choppy steps, you go nowhere fast. James Smith again told me, he said the other day, he goes, it's a fixed constraint that mimics the stride length of a toddler. There's no forces produced at the hip. Boo Schnecksnyder, who's like a Dan Paff, one of the most intelligent men I've ever met on power speed athletes. If foot speed equated to running speed, then piano players would have the greatest fastballs, fastest fastballs. But I think, I see people pull out a foot ladder and talk about speed. I'm just like, number one, you don't know what you're doing. And number two, you're just looking for redundant work. You're just looking to have them do something because you really don't know what else to do training wise.
Yeah.
So, I'm still I still hate the foot ladder. I always will. And I'm sure people will chastise me about that, but you know what? It's my program. It's not yours. I don't give a shit what you do in your program. I always believe that in every situation you can learn from somebody and get off of there.
No, I like this dog.
Every situation you can learn off of somebody. There's always something to be learned. If anything, learn what not to do. So I'm telling some of my guys, well, you're a personal terrorist. At least you learn what not to do.
Well, I'm turning off. If you guys want to check out the filming of this, we have it on YouTube always. You got to be part of our Patreon to get it. And you could see it on there. John Ware, one of our fans that listens all the time, really didn't think I'd ask this question, but he wanted to know how you kept your players out of the dirty O when you were at Pitt.
Listen, I went to the dirty O, John. Nobody stayed out. I remember Keith Hamilton, and the Hammer played years in the NFL for the Giants. He'd finish a 16. What was it? A quarter? What was it? A quarter beer? 16 ounces of beer?
Yeah, I think it's 16 ounces.
16 ounces. By the time he got from the O to the stadium, which is right up the street, he'd have a quart done.
Wow.
So nobody stayed out of it.
So the O, we're talking about the dirty O, is a place where you bought like a loaf of French fries. A loaf. They would just pile this, if you ever go to Pittsburgh, it's called the Original. I don't know if it's still there.
It's still there.
And it's on the corner of Forbes Avenue and
I don't even know the side street, but it's still there.
And
it's right below the towers.
Yeah, it might be Atwood Street. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's right below the towers, which is the dormitories. And you order, and like, you're a college kid and you have like $3 to your name. You go spend like $3 and they give you a loaf of French fries, a loaf the size of a loaf of bread. And they give you a gravy, a ketchup, a cheese, and I forget what else with it.
But here's what's great about it. If you haven't had your fill at the O, you can go right next door to Permani Brothers.
Oh, Permani's. People don't understand. Permani Brothers is if you go to Pittsburgh, you have to eat it. It's a sandwich where they put Italian bread, they put meat, they put coleslaw, tomato, French fries, and cheese, and then another piece of Italian bread. And I took a friend, a comedian, Joe Matarese, there once, an Italian kid. We went down to the O, and I said, "You got to eat this. It's Pittsburgh. It's what we eat here. It's famous for this city." And he ate it, and he looked at me, and he goes, "That's the worst thing I've ever eaten." That's what I said. He goes, but he goes,
Troy, and I loved it.
He goes, "For some reason, I want another." I'm a kielbasa and cheese. That's the one I get.
I just said like the regular Permani cheesesteak. Like my wife was from Buffalo. She didn't like it, but her son Troy, who I've had since he was 11, he and I used to love Permani's. In fact, we used to go into CC's and just walk through and eat the garlic bread and then turn around and walk right back out. And I hate to say that. But we'd go to CC's Pizza. I said, "Troy, want some garlic bread?" After we took Sergeant Sifu Slaughter, which was right in Cranberry on Korean martial arts, we took Eagle Claw Kung Fu together. And we'd come out of Kung Fu class, and sometimes we'd stop at CC's Pizza just to walk through the line just to get the garlic bread, eat a couple, and then go home.
Couple other questions. A guy here, it was actually my show at the House of Comedy. Roger Pruger said he said you've gotten to coach Adrian Peterson, Chris Johnson, David Johnson. Who does he see as the freak amongst the freaks of running back athletes?
Honestly,
yeah,
Curtis Martin.
Really?
Curtis Martin, and don't get me wrong, Adrian Peterson was a bull. Chris Johnson was one of the funniest, greatest dudes I've ever been around. His two twin boys look like crisscross. I used to say, Chris, there's a future right there when you retire. Them two boys are crisscross. David Johnson is phenomenal.
What they say, jump.
Yeah. But, my wife and I have been, personally invited to a couple Hall of Fame inductions from Dan Marino, Chris Doman, and then Curtis Martin. But Curtis Martin is probably one, as far as fluidity, and I've had Shady McCoy and Dion Lewis, but as far as his ability to anticipate things, which great backs always have that ability to anticipate before things happen, I think Curtis was the best.
And talk about genetically gifted. I mean, there's a guy that I remember he played 1 year of high school football?
1 year of high school football, Taylor Alderdice. And then went to Pitt, and then came out early at Pitt.
And he didn't play much at Pitt. He was injured.
He was injured. That's how I wasn't coaching at Pitt, but he was injured and started calling me. And when Reuben Brown was suspended from the Pitt football team, Sean Gilbert would put him in a truck, his SUV, and drive him to Farrell, PA, where I was working in a hospital in a rehab and performance center, and he would make Reuben drive to see me 3 days a week. So Reuben then actually went to Curtis Martin and then, Anthony Dorsett. That's how I stayed in touch with those guys and still was able to train athletes even though I wasn't in that environment. And, Martin, I think it wasn't until he played in what's the game at the end of the year? Is it the blue-gray game or whatever the game that they play, the college game? He played in one of those. The Senior Bowl.
The Senior Bowl. It was the Senior Bowl, and I think
San Francisco.
I think Majors was a coach, and he had Martin play on this team, and that's where he shined. And that was
Curtis was tremendously gifted, and Shady has that ability too to see things happen before they happen.
I think Curtis came out for the track team like one day and beat everybody, and then never came again.
I always tell this story in the old weight room at old Pitt Stadium, the new weight room they had built. I used to eat my lunch on the plyo boxes, because I could stay on the floor. And Curtis came in to see me one day, and he just had boots on, just street clothes. And I turned to say something to somebody, and next thing I know, he's standing on top of a 40-inch box. And I'm like, I didn't hear him land. I didn't hear him take off. I'm like, how did you do that? And he goes, I just did it. But he was probably the most gifted running back I've ever been around. People forget about him, but and I have had some great ones in Arizona. I really have. But yeah, Curtis Martin was the best.
Question from Frank Wojan wants to know what type of periodization you use. You said you don't really
I use a concept, and I refer to periodization as a concept, Frank, because again, you can't predict where you're going to be 12 weeks from now. So I write blocks of training in 4-week blocks, and that 4-week blocks determines what I'm going to do the next block. But if you've ever read Charlie Francis's Vertical Integration Periodization, that's the template of what I follow. And I throw some West Side Barbell in there and some other. So it's a mishmash or hodgepodge of a lot of different ideas. But again, it's geared to my athletes, my environment, my circumstances. I think people forget you can't do what I do because you're not in my environment. You don't have my athletes, or you're not under the same circumstances I have. Periodization, again, is just a plan, but that plan, like Dan Paff says, has got to be subject to change, because on a daily basis, and here's how I judge my guys, and we all know this, and Frank, if you ever lifted, when your grip strength ain't worth a shit, you're not worth a shit, because your nervous system is most sensitive to ears, hands, and feet. I know when I go in and grab a load or grab a plate, if that 45-pound plate feels like 800 pounds, I know I'm in for it. I better decrease. So what I've done in my training now as I get older is I kind of limit from a time frame. My wife will always tell you, no, you're always going to do that one extra set, which I still do. But I limit the amount of load I use, and because I'm older, and I limit the amount of time I try to get in and out as quickly as possible. But it also depends on, if I've had a stressful day at work. So my periodization for my athletes is based off of Charlie Francis's. I think Brad DeWeese, who's at Middle Tennessee State, I believe, has done some great things. I think John Keeley, who's from Ireland, who I met through Robbie Burke, who's from Ireland also, and some Tommy Farrell and some guys I met when we were over in London last year, have a tremendous understanding or grasp that, periodization is not the end all to be all. There's multiple variations. There's multiple facets of it. You talk to Medvedev, you talk to Ishurin, you talk to Verkhoshansky, you talk to Zatsortsky. They all have different ideas of what periodization is. But the goal is it's just a plan. But again, as I said, nothing ever goes according to plan. I'm sure when the greatest generals of the world sat down and planned D-Day, they didn't plan for the weather, and they sure didn't plan for missed drop zones or casualties.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to adapt and improvise. And my judging my players is if they come in and they're just laying on the floor and they're just kind of like silently looking at each other, and I have a high intense work plan for the day, I better be able to change. Now, I can also do things to help them. So turn on their music. Put Lil Wayne on, which I can't stand that guy. Drake, I don't like either.
Isn't Lil Wayne from Pittsburgh?
No.
Wiz Khalifa.
Wiz Khalifa. I actually like some Wiz Khalifa stuff. I told my wife the other day, I said, there's actually one Drake song that I like. He's so monotone, I want to choke him every time I hear him sing. Don't Stop, I think it was. It's because of the beat in the background that I like.
Tim Heitzman wanted to know what your opinion of CrossFit is, but we got that. But he said he's seen some college programs using it now for
it's just another mistake. And part of that is driven by head coaches, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because head coaches want that rah, beat them up, grind them into the ground, make them tough. And I understand that mentality in college, because you're taking young men and trying to make them into men.
Sure.
So, and you're getting them at the height of when they're producing their most testosterone. You're getting them when they're most receptive to training, the flowering of strength ages, as the East Germans used to refer to it. I think it's from 18 to 27. In the NFL, you got to understand, this is your job. This is what you're paid to do. You're competing against the elite of the elite. There's only 1,700 athletes employed in the NFL.
Wow.
That's it. That's not a lot.
Wow.
It's the average lifespan is 2.9 or 3.2 years. You're not going to be there for 25 years, get a dinner and a gold watch at the end of 25 years.
Sure.
You could be here today, gone tomorrow. And that's the same with coaches. You could be here today, gone tomorrow, unfortunately. But that's what the NFL is.
It's funny you say that, because I've had a lot of Navy SEALs on this show, and it's kind of the same thing. Everybody thinks these Navy SEALs are like doing CrossFit type stuff where they're beating the shit out of each other all day long, or themselves. But they don't. They do it through Bud's training. And once it's over, they don't. Then they're on their own training programs.
And what you're doing with that program is you're weeding out those guys that really don't want to be Navy SEALs. You're looking for those guys who mentally can handle it.
Sure.
And not all of them are going to be able to handle it. James Smith, who was my assistant at Pitt, went through it twice.
Oh, did he?
Both was medical discharges. Mm-hmm. But, like I said, James is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my entire life. A global Oh God, James, I forget your website now. But one of the most intelligent people I've ever been around in my entire
We'll
life.
find that. I'll post that on here because I want to read up on James. One thing I remember at Pitt, and I think it came from you, when we went in the weight room, they said no belts, no straps, no gloves.
No.
And they said, and I said, why? And I think it was your methodology. They said, if your hands aren't strong enough to lift it, you shouldn't be lifting it.
Same thing if you have to have somebody hand you the dumbbells up. If I have to have somebody hand me the dumbbells, I'm doing dumbbell incline, I shouldn't be doing that load. Pick them up and clean them up yourself. Grip strength to me is everything. Reflexively, once the body gets under a load, those abs are going to contract. I think people have made too much have emphasized too much on bracing. Now, I think the world of Stuart McGill. We had an injury resilience conference in Vegas last year where Stuart McGill spoke, him and Brian Carroll, two very intelligent men. I love Stuart. Matt Jordan spoke from the Canadian Institute of Sport on ACL and force deck. Dan Paff spoke and Derek Hansen spoke. And I'm thinking, you know what? I've been talking to these guys for the last 10, 12 years, except for Matt Jordan. I think Matt is very intelligent. And if I have any question on force plate or force deck, I either text him or go to all his stuff. And I've listened to those speeches or those talks 2 and 3 times because, the Professional Football Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association sends you those because you were there at the conference. But I've listened to everybody speak at least 3 or 4 times. But I think too much is made out of bracing. I think people forget the body guys who are going to reflexively fire your abs as soon as you encounter anything. Mm-hmm. I think we have in this country what's the dysfunction of the month club. First it was the TA, then it was the multifidus, then it's the VMO, now it's the glute med and glute minus. Every flavor, every muscle in the human body has a flavor of the month that has to be corrected or is dysfunctional. Christ, if you think about it, if we're that dysfunctional, we can't move, we can't walk. I love when people say, your glutes are inactive. Really, I just sat down to take a shit. How are my glutes inactive? I just sat down.
Yeah.
I'm walking up steps. I'm walking, period. So how are my glutes inactive?
Right.
Now I understand if you get back pain, then you will shut down and inhibit your glutes fine.
Sure.
And I understand that they may be down regulated, but they're never inactive. Yeah. Nothing in the human body is inactive. Mm-hmm. That's what drives me nuts. Oh, we got to do activation. No, you just might have to refresh something, but the tissue is still active.
Yeah. Except for those guys that need Viagra.
That's not good.
Here's Who Walford. He wants to know what would be your best advice for someone who wants to progress a career in strength and conditioning.
Oh, Jesus. Let me put it to you this way. And I get emails all the time. If your life's dream, if your goal, if your pursuit in life, if it's all you've ever lived for, if it's why you wake up in the morning is to work in the NFL, you're going to be sadly disappointed. And I'm being honest. I'm very fortunate and very privileged to be here. I'm one of only 32. And again, that may end it next week, but I've been fortunate enough to get to this level. I've always told people you should worry about doing the best job at where you are at that point in time. Don't worry about anything else. Just worry about doing the best job. Unfortunately, this is a profession of who you know, not what you know. And you can see that across the country in colleges, in every aspect of life. It's about who you know. So number one, you better be able to network. Mm-hmm. I'm a horrible networker, so don't ask me. I pay attention to just what I'm doing. I really don't like people in general. I'm not a talkative person, except for when I'm on a podcast. My wife will tell me, are you going to talk today? But it's about, you got to start off doing an internship with somebody or volunteering time. But strength and conditioning coaches have become like dentists and lawyers. There's too many of them.
Yeah.
And they're not all good.
It's like comedy. Trust me. There's too many of us.
I'm not certified by either organization because I don't believe in either organization until you start teaching what is proper and stop telling people like we talked about to increase speed. I need to increase stride length and stride frequency. When those are just byproducts of running fast.
Sure.
Then maybe I'll take your certification test. But I've seen guys who have been certified who have caused death. And I know, unfortunately, one strength coach who had a young athlete die, and he was certified.
Wow.
But the NSCA and the CSCCA didn't say a word. It was crickets. But when another strength coach who was at a smaller college had an athlete die, unfortunately, they chastised him and said, well, he wasn't certified. So quit being hypocrites. That's just that's seeing it the way it is. Unfortunately, we're a volume oriented country. More is better. I had a kid, a linebacker we got from a team, and I corrected his asymmetry. It was a 38% asymmetry on an ACL surgically repaired leg. So he started doing things on his own with somebody else. So one day he goes in a training room and he's just metabolically fatigued. He's shot. His hamstrings bother him again. So the trainer comes to me and he says, you got to stop doing these corrections. I said, Tom, I stopped them a long time ago. Here it is in paper. So here's my paper trail. Here's my program trail. I've only been doing maintenance on him. He's getting it somewhere else. Well, sure enough, because he thought more is more better.
Right.
That's how we are as a country. More is more better.
Yep.
I mean, look at the size of the dinner plate, how it's increased. It used to be just get an order of fries from McDonald's. Now you supersize them.
It's so funny you say that because I think that's something that everybody next week, the guest on the show is Dr. Drew. From the TV doctor, and we're talking about body dysmorphia and exercise addiction and how people think that volume is everything.
Yep.
And they've got to work out 3 times a day and they've got to do this and that, and how sometimes.
Listen, if you can't get it done in an hour and a half, what makes you think you're going to get it done another time in a day? What makes you think you're going to get it in 3 or 4 hours? If you can't get it done in 2 or 3 sets, what makes you think you're going to do it in 10 sets?
Yeah.
And I've done German volume training.
Oh, I've
done 10 sets of 10.
I've tried it. It's awful.
Oh, I did it one time. We were at camp in Johnstown, and my assistant, Mark Kostick, and I were in Johnstown's very small weight room. And I'm talking small where it just had a fan. That was the air conditioning. So Mark gets the bright idea. We're going to do German volume 10 sets of 10. We're shutting the door, and we're turning the fan off. I'm like, oh, this is fucking great. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to back down. So we started squatting. I started 315. I got through my first 7 sets of 10.
At 315.
At 315.
Jesus.
The next set I dropped down to 95, and the last 2 sets I finished at 275 and couldn't walk for 10 days. I induced that much soreness. In other words, when I think back on it, I almost put myself in rhabdo.
Yeah.
And it seems nowadays, these so-called certified strength coaches who've had athletes go through rhabdo, then why are you certified? And you're making more money than I'll ever see, because if you look at the top 20 college strength coaches, what they're paid, I can't make that top 20 list.
At a pro level?
At a pro level. So if you're making that much money, you better be doing something that's significant. You better win a national championship every freaking year. If you're making over $700,000 a year, you better win a national championship every year.
Unbelievable. There's a workout in CrossFit called Murph. I heard of Murph, yeah. And it's 100, run a mile, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, 100 pull-ups. And one time I did it on a fast. I had been fasting, and I was like, well, I want to eat, but I got to do the workout now. Should I eat? And I didn't eat, and I suppressed my immune system and ended up giving myself Bell's palsy. I woke up the next day with half my face paralyzed. And
yeah, that's too much.
I called a friend of mine. He said, you suppress your immune system.
You did something you weren't prepared for.
Yeah.
Never give people things they're not prepared for. And going to fasting, I intermittent fast.
Yeah.
My wife's son, Fred Duncan, who I think is one of the top leading authorities on fasting in this country, wrote a book, Fit, Fast, or Feast. It's a $19 book. It's on my Instagram page. I intermittent fast. There's sometimes I don't eat from like 8 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It's lowered my blood pressure.
Yeah, I do a lot of it myself.
I feel better.
Yeah.
My daughter Kara's on a liver transplant list. I try to encourage her to always pay attention to what she eats. But I think when it comes to intermittent fasting, there's a lot to be said for it. Mm-hmm. The go-to guy I use, obviously, is Fred, and he's one of those young, bright minds, like a Gadango, like Eric Cressy, like a Mike Robertson. There's some very there's intelligent young kids out there.
There's a great guy out of California, out of Los Angeles, Dr. Walter Longo, that's doing a fast mimicking diet, it's a ketonic diet that gets you into a fasted state, but you're still eating calories, and he does it a lot for cancer patients, and it's had incredible results.
Listen, when we first took over this country, we weren't eating 3 or 4, 5, 6 meals a day.
It's insane.
But we survived.
It's insane.
Just like back in the 70s, we didn't have a cell phone.
I've just finally started taking some of the stuff that I do on the show, and I've been putting in my act, and about the eating habits of people, and about, how we are as a nation, how we think. And it's funny because I never thought I'd be able to get laughs, because my jokes are just about the, stuff that goes on in society and my family and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, it's on the conscience of everybody in the audience about how, food's hyper available, and how we're, experiencing, everybody's diabetic or pre-diabetic, and we're all having to take tons of pharmaceuticals.
You watch TV, obviously.
Yeah.
Every commercial is a drug commercial. For the first 5 seconds, it announces the drug. For the next 25 seconds is all the side effects.
Watch my Lunesta joke.
Oh my God.
My
wife and I were watching Ellen DeGeneres last night and she said the same thing. You could get that. Yeah.
And how about now? I just watched, they now have an ad for Narcom, I think it's called, which is the opioid. If you overdose on opioids, Narcom is the drug, I believe, if I'm saying it right, that they give it to you if you've overdosed. They're now advertising that you can buy this and keep it in your house. They're going, hey, there's a good chance you're going to overdose. You're going to need this drug when you overdose. We're preparing people for overdosing.
Yeah, Ellen DeGeneres said something about that last night. I forget what it was. Pre-headache or pre-migraines. You know you're going to get one, so just let me write this script and just take it in now. But drug companies, oil companies are what run this country.
Yep, they do. Last question from Colton Hicks. He said, as someone who does CrossFit and also coaches 7th and 8th grade athletes, football, basketball, and track, it's been challenging to figure out what strength and conditioning protocol is safe, practical, effective, and teachable to the age group. It would be interesting to hear your take on it.
Here's number one. Teach them to move, perfect their movement patterns. So the value of an active dynamic warm-up cannot be overlooked because they'll slow things down and get the brain's attention, and you can actually change the way how the brain patterns movement by doing things slow through an active dynamic warm-up. So number one, as an athlete, I don't give two shits how strong you get. You got to be able to move. Mm-hmm. What good are you if you can't move?
True.
I can get anybody on a platform and squat 800 pounds, but can they move? And can they repeat that movement over and over again for the period of time of the sporting activity or sporting requirement? So number one, teach them to move. Number two, teach them to use their body as own external resistance. Push-ups, sit-ups. We used to have the old universal gyms. And on the old universal gyms used to be dip bars. I used to sit under the dip bars, place my hand up, and do a modified pull-up with my feet on a bench. That's how I started to teach myself how to do pull-ups. Med balls are invaluable. Those are the things I would start my athletes. Don't be in a rush to put a bar on somebody's back. Don't be in a rush to put a bar and have kids start bench pressing when they can't even do 10 push-ups.
Yeah.
Teach them how to move. Teach them how to use their body in time and space. Remember when we were growing up, we had red light, green light.
Yeah.
We had Red Rover, Santa Monica over.
Yep.
We had it tag gags. We had 4 squares.
Did you play kick the can?
Played kick the can, kick the ball, kick the person. It didn't matter. We were kicking somebody, but all those things are no longer in society.
No.
Listen, I would hate to be I'd hate to be, I always tell my kids, I'd hate to be you right now. And I'd hate to be you having children. Cause listen, you can fix crazy. You can't fix fucked up.
Yeah.
And this world is fucked up. That's the way it is. We're delusional and dysfunctional because of Facebook.
Can I quote you on that?
Yeah,
I think I'm going to put that as the title of this episode. You can fix crazy. You can't fix fucked up.
And that's what this society has become. and again, it goes back to, this is why I don't like personal terrorists. Because the minute you show up at your personal terrorist facility, you're going to be on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Snapchat. You're paying their bills. And don't get me wrong, I understand that. Because I had to make a living doing that. But you stray too far away from what the physical preparation staff of that team is trying to accomplish. So you could profoundly confuse the body, and then the body has to come to us and now say, oh shit, I got to do something different now because my requirements from a bioenergetic standpoint, or everything's going to change again. So now there's another adaptation or transition phase as we get them back from them not doing anything or them doing stupid stuff like doing sprints in sand. Now I have to correct that.
Sure.
And again, and the NFL wonders why are your injury rates so high? You put these guys in that position because whoever developed or okayed the CBA did not have a concern for the athlete from a physical or physiological standpoint. We don't practice enough. We don't practice with pads on. There's not a long preparatory period. Remember when I was growing up, the Steelers went to camp at the end of June. They didn't see their first preseason game until August. So there's plenty of time to prepare.
Sure.
And gradually increase loads and accumulate those
I think
levels.
Ryan was telling us the injuries that all occur happen in the first 2 weeks or something.
You have there's 2 spikes in injury in the NFL. One is to start training camp and one is after the bye week. Because again, after the bye, when you get to bye week, what do guys do? Debauchery and whatever they feel like in Vegas. So there's 4 days of not sleeping, not eating properly, chasing chicks and drinking. And then you're trying to come back, and now you got to introduce loads of practice again. But not only that, when you take 4 days off, the body just totally shuts down. It goes into total recovery mode. There's no transition. So you're going to see, I think it was, you're 74 times more likely to get injured at camp and another 36 times more likely to get injured after the bye week. So there's 2 spikes in injury in the NFL. And a part of it is the lack of preparatory, that last 5 weeks, that last week of preparation, which is the most important, you're relying on somebody else who does not have a vested interest in your athletes. Now that you have some guys who unfortunately take the attitude, I'm going to get in shape at camp because it's a long season. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So you have to account for all those because they're all showing up at different phases in their preparation. And we need, as strength coaches in the NFL, more preparatory time. You can't just give us 2 weeks and say, okay, we're back on the field. Or you can't take them away. We're trying to train our athletes during the most intensive period of time, the game, when the max effort is every Sunday. So now how can I try and get these guys to recover while I'm trying to maintain and correct asymmetries during the season when all their energies are focused on practice, the technical and tactical demand, the psychological demand of practice, and the games itself? I'm going to train them heavy in the weight room. All I'm going to do is rob Peter to pay Paul to see if I can get them to inhibit their ability to recover because I'm going to make them strong in season. You're not going to do that in season. That's absurd to even think that.
Yeah. Well, I've taken up so much of your time, and I appreciate it. This has been awesome. I think the people listening to the show are going to love it. You said you had an Instagram. Can they go to an Instagram page to see it?
Yeah, I have it. It's just Buddy Morris 412. There ain't shit on it. I'll tell you what's on it. Larry Fitzgerald is famous for tackling people. Larry Fitzgerald, and he gets you low around the ankles, so you're going to go down. I don't care who you are. There's a picture of Larry tackling me and him wrestling. There's a picture of Fit, Feast, and Fast, Fred's book. There's a picture of Michael Johnson and Michael Phelps. And I think that's about it.
I saw Larry Fitzgerald one time against Rutgers. It was not a televised game. Running down the sidelines, catch a ball up in the air with one hand and never tuck it in. He just kept sprinting.
He does that at practice all the time.
Kept sprinting with the ball in one hand.
Before we end, though, I really got to say, really sad because, the passing of Billy Frelick.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just happened.
I was very fortunate to have been his strength coach in college. I was very fortunate to have a great relationship with him. When my daughter was first placed on her transplant list, my daughters, Kara and Claire, we had a fundraiser, a golf tournament 2 years in a row where Danny Marino was a celebrity chairperson, but Frelick, Sweeney, Stepnoski, Terrell Davis, Emo Boris, all those, Dean Calaguar, Bill Chirp, all those great former players. Tony Saragusa came out for me free of charge to help her raise money for her transplant.
That's great.
And Billy was one of those. And it was really sad because, the last time I was at Pitt, my wife had always heard me talk about Billy, and she's always heard me talk about Curtis. She got to meet him. And she really started, she really said what a fine, upstanding man he is, a man's man. And to me, Billy was always bigger than life. He always has been, always will be. And understand that, to hear that he had passed away, and Larry told me, because we were going out to practice, and Larry said, Billy just passed away. Yeah. And it was a very sad moment for me. I don't do Instagram, but I actually went on Facebook, had my assistant tell me how to go on Facebook, and wrote some because it was about a week after my best friend, Gussie Sinceri's mother, Mrs. Sinceri, who was a tremendous influence in my life when I was in college and really helped take care of me, also passed away. So
I'm sorry to hear that.
It was really tough for that, but it was really, I heard Billy, and I never thought anybody or anything.
Such a big, strong guy.
Yeah, could ever take down.
And cancer got him, right?
The cancer's undefeated.
Yep. Yeah.
That's unfortunate. My wife lost her late husband to pancreatic cancer. Unfortunately, like I said, it's undefeated, but it's very sad for me when Billy passed away. Because like I said, Billy always has been bigger than life to me. And always will remain that, even though he's long gone.
Yeah, very sad. Well, thank you again. One last thing. Did you ever work with Craig Ironhead Hayward?
Yeah. Yeah, I was there for Craig Ironhead Hayward's time. I remember playing a Blue Bonnet Bowl. He was on 305 pounds and just literally hurtling over people. So
305 pounds playing running back.
He was just
playing tailback.
Yeah, playing tailback. His head was enormous.
Yeah.
And I always told him, it's unbelievable. The thing about he passed away from a brain tumor. His head was the size of a lampshade. And he was so strong. He could not lift weights for 10 years in a row, still come in a weight room, throw 405 on a bar and put it up.
Wow.
I remember one day, because Tony Saragusa played on that same team. And Goose was an all-state wrestler from New Jersey.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Goose played 11 years in the NFL, or 12 years in the NFL with the Baltimore Ravens. And I remember he and Iron had tied up. And I remember Iron had just backflipping him, Goose, right onto his face. I thought he killed him easily. And Goose had to be 290 pounds at the time. Yeah, but I just watched him just pick him up, put his arm under arm, and just go like backwards like a pile driver and literally drive Goose's head into the ground.
Yeah, he was a machine.
I'm like, Jesus Christ, this kid, he had he had no idea how strong he was. And now his son's playing for the Steelers, which is great to see. But yeah, I had the privilege of being Ironhead's strength. I had some great ones my first 10 years now. I used to tell people all the time, there ain't nothing I'm doing. The hardest thing I do is open the door and turn the lights on. The only thing I'm trying not to do is screw these guys up.
Dan Marino lift weights at all?
No, Danny Danny did jump rope and do some stuff for me, but no, Danny was not going to be fond in the weight room every day. But he used to come in and said, make sure these big guys are strong so I don't get hit. So he goes, I'm trusting you to do that. So he would show up every day and throw the ball and do a little bit in the weight room, but he was there just to make sure his linemen were there.
Yeah, and get them their isotoner gloves.
Yeah, get them isotoner gloves.
So thanks for listening. Again, it's been an honor. Thank you, Buddy Morris. And you guys can check us out on iTunes and Patreon at wadcastpodcast.com. All my dates are available at eddieif.com. Come out and see me live. And that's it. Thanks a lot.
Eddie, thank you.
Thank you.